Hey you, yeah, you, the one trying to make a video game. I've got someone here that can help you, and that someone is Intel, which is not a someone, it's a company. But this company, they are going to help you as if they were a somebody and a someone and also a something. Check out software.intel.com/gamedev to find out how Intel is making sure all the innovation in gaming continues to happen on the PC as part of the Intel Game Dev program. Again, that URL is software.intel.com/gamedev. Sign up and start something new. It's the end of the year. You're probably not busy. You're probably sipping cocoa with the family. We are going to keep you busy for the next hour and a half, maybe, deciding the top 10 games of the year for GamesBeat as a whole. With me is, well, I should say my name first, right? I'm Jeff Grubb, your host. With me is...
I'm the real Jeff Grubb. Don't listen to him.
Oh, we've already messed it up.
I'm Mike Minotti.
Hi, it's Managing Editor Jason Wilson. Merry Christmas.
Hello, it's Stephanie.
We're going to start talking about, what games should be on the top 10. We'll probably go around here at the beginning making some nominees for the final list. And we'll start making some hard cuts later. I think to get started, I think I'm just actually going to point to you, Mike. I'm going to have you move one game from our nominee list to the top 10. Or we could go the other way. We could just say we could cut one of these games, but I think we should probably start with moving a game to the top 10, just kind of start building that list.
All right.
Wait, do I want to should I read all these nominees that we actually have listed first, just so people can get an idea of where we're starting from?
Yeah,
Sure, why not?
Okay.
Because we have a big list. This is bigger than last year, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Probably more good games this year.
I think so. Yeah. So okay, here let's just start from the top. Divinity: Original Sin 2, Super Mario Odyssey, Wolfenstein 2, Hellblade, PUBG, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Persona 5, Mario plus Rabbids, Cuphead, Sonic Mania, Heat Signature, Shovel Knight Spectre of Torment, SteamWorld Dig 2, Horizon Zero Dawn, Nier Automata, Yakuza 0, Assassin's Creed Origins, Metroid Samus Returns, Torment Tides of Numenera, Night in the Woods, What Remains of Edith Finch, and Prey. And Yee's 8, but we've already thrown that out because that was Anthony, and he's not here. So,
Sorry, Anthony.
Yeah. Coming to work sometime instead of taking vacation.
I'm gonna say
Hi,
one
Penny.
thing. I'm gonna say one thing about Yeez is that I've seen it on a number of lists this year, and so I think if you enjoy Japanese RPGs, you probably should check it out.
Yeah, I've also heard a lot of good things from people who know what they're talking about when it comes to those kinds of games. All right, so let's just let's do this. Mike, back to you. What from this list on the right would you want to move over to the list on the left?
Mario. Super
that
Mario
doesn't sound
Odyssey.
right. Yeah, no, I get it. I'm just gonna move it over there right now.
Hooray.
So, yeah, I think that we don't have to necessarily make a lot of discussion right now because I think I'm sort of with you. Because at this point we're not going to be having to make any tough choices, and I think we'll really get into these games once we start arranging stuff. So if we want, we could just kind of move on to keep this moving to build up this list quickly.
We can move on.
Yeah. All right, Jason, let's go with you. What game would you want to move over to the top 10?
Okay, so I would like to move over Divinity: Original Sin, but I do need to note a potential conflict of interest.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the writers is Kevin Van Ord, who I interviewed for a job 2 years ago, and who I'm also considering a friend. He wrote parts of the game, including one of the characters, Beast. But in my appraisal of the game, I did not play Beast, to make it a little more fair.
All right, that's good to know. Yeah, thanks for actually doing that. That's always a good idea. Okay, Stephanie, what would you move over?
I'm going to go with Night in the Woods. I love it.
Oh, you already did that. Excellent. All right.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize.
No,
I didn't know
it's-
if I was supposed to.
No, that works for me too.
God,
That's cool.
Stephanie.
I'm
Rookie
all
mistake,
screwing
rookie mistake.
up.
Okay, yeah. So I've pretty strong feeling that I think we're going to end up leaving all of these games on the top 10. But I think what we should do now is maybe cut some games from this list on the right. Actually, let me since we've already moved some of these over, let me delete them from this list. Mike, is there anything on the list on the right that you wouldn't want to move over, and then or like you would like kind of be not sure about?
I mean, Prey, right?
This station was your laboratory, and the experiment was a failure.
The outbreak can be contained. Earth can be spared. It has to be me. I know what's coming.
Some people will never understand what you can do.
From what I understand, I didn't really get around to Prey. I think Dean was maybe our only real advocate for it, unless he feels strongly about it. But from what I understand, it's a good but flawed game, right? Maybe not like top 10 material, just a good game.
Did anyone, when they played, get kind of that freak out sense that they did when they watched The Thing the first time?
Oh, I haven't watched The Thing. I'm a coward.
Yeah, The Thing is on my it's like on my Plex home media server, like of movies I need to be watching, and I haven't yet. I might actually watch it this holiday, but
you should.
I'll
it's
tell
a
you,
perfect Christmas movie.
I always say that
snow.
actually does seem like it. Yeah, it's cold and stuff, and lonely and depressing. I will say that I did get a freak out vibe of like just like being alone on a space station, and I'm always shocked. Like sometimes I respond to that like really well, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to play this game. Like it's too oppressive. I think Prey is like almost right on the border of being too oppressive or really fascinating and like compelling me to like keep going because it's so like lonely and such a solo experience. But I don't know. It's another one of those Bethesda immersive sims that I bounced off of. So I just don't know. I'm with Mike on this one. All right, yeah, I think we can actually move this over. I'm gonna move over just to the right just so we can remember these games that we talked about.
It's ambitious, and I really respect what it was going for.
Yeah, and it's one of those games where I completely understand why people like it so much, and I've come to terms with accepting that genre isn't for me. Actually, let's see, how many games do we actually have? So we have 17 left on the right for 5 slots to fill on the left. Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Yeah, I think we can move on. I think Prey's good and done.
Yeah, no, I've already moved Prey off. So I was going to say we should go around doing cuts, but let's just let Mike do that cut for now. What we should do, let's keep putting games on the left, and as we start, let's do like 3 rounds, and then if there's anything left on the right, we'll see like if we really want to like maybe try to argue one of those onto the list, we can, but then we can just start making cuts. Okay, so let's Mike, you just did a cut, but I think we just go back to you just to keep that old cycle going. What would you move from the 17 games on the right into the top 10?
I think Persona 5 would be my next favorite game we haven't moved over. There's my weeb choice.
Yeah, I guess I'm not surprised.
It's on my list.
Again, I looked at your list. But yeah, I thought if there was going to be one weeb choice, it would have been Nier. But all right, I'll accept Persona 5. Jason, how about you? What would you move over?
I would move over, even though it's not on my top 10 list, for the sake of this discussion, I would probably move over What Remains of Edith Finch. Because, I would love to make a huge case for Torment Tides and Numenera, but I'm doing some real big thinking about it last night, and we'll get back to that when it's time to the cuts.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I'm curious to hear about that. All right. Stephanie, how about you?
I'm going to go with what's behind Weeb door number 2. So, Nier Automata.
Okay. I realize we have a goal for a time here, but old man Jason needs to know, where did Weeb come from?
I don't know.
It's from Weeaboo.
Which is the term, as far as I know, just means white person who likes Japanese culture. Is that what it is?
It's like white person who wants to be Japanese, and there's like this convoluted backstory. I think it may have come from the Perry Bible Fellowship, possibly. Yeah. But
so weeb is just like it's short for that. And it's like weeb trash is what you'll hear a lot online, which is you can just say Mike Minotti if you want. The terms are interchangeable.
He's not wrong.
Well, yeah, but I didn't think weeb trash would like the Cleveland Indians.
That's a good point.
That's Cleveland trash. That's a completely different thing. Similar but different.
I feel like we'll have lots of
Venn
opportunities
diagram
to really examine the mind of a weeb throughout this discussion, so we'll get back to that. Okay, I have time to think about this. I mean, I think, yeah, I'd have to move PUBG over. That would probably be my next one, although I'm starting to get to a point where a lot of them could be my number 3. Okay, so yeah, we have 10 games over there, but there's games on the right still that I'm like, I think some of them maybe should be over there. So let's do one more round where we add stuff to the top 10, so we'll have like 15, and then we'll kind of assess where we're at. So, Mike, back to you.
Sonic Mania.
So far, you're the only person I've seen have that on your list.
Oh, well, I guess everyone else doesn't have good taste.
But I've only seen the lists of, you guys, which, of course, not everyone's read, except for Dean's, maybe, and the favorite list at US Gamer.
I mean, I guess I always was a little, predisposed to like it a bit more than the average person just because of my kind of history with Sonic and stuff like that.
Yeah, my thing was always, I was surprised how much I liked it because I never liked Sonic very much.
Yeah, you're one of those Sonic was never gooders.
Yeah, I always tried to like those games back. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to like this. I mean, I know I'm a Nintendo, fanboy.
Are the Sonic never gooders better or worse than the Never Trumpers who have no power and do nothing?
I believe I am probably worse, if we're being honest here. Okay, Jason, how about you? Is there one from the right you would move over to the left?
At this point, I wouldn't.
Okay, yeah, I think that's perfectly acceptable.
I don't think any of those games, for me at least, break into the top. Now, there's one that I could see other people making a case for, but I really don't like Horizon.
Yeah,
that's... my reasons are very different than other people's reasons.
Yeah, and I think that's
they come down. They come down to my inability to stealth.
Yeah, that's okay. You also have it spelled Horizon. Okay. So then, yeah, we could don't feel like you're compelled to have to move something over. That's totally fine. Stephanie, how about you? Is there something you would move over?
I'm kind of in the same camp as Jason. I'm tempted to say Yakuza 0, even though I've only played Kiwami, just because I love Kiryu and like the way they do open world. But I haven't played Yakuza 0, so I don't feel like I should vouch for that.
Man, that might disqualify it.
Yeah. So I think I'll probably hold.
Maybe we should put Horizon up there because I do think there's some conversation to be had there. I mean,
I think you're right, Dean. I mean, if Call of Duty is really your choice, I'll put it over there. But I'm telling you, I played that game for this moment in particular, in preparation. All right.
You played it for this moment.
Exactly. Yes, because last year, like we didn't play it. Only
dude, I should give you a raise for that.
Exactly. Yes, damn right. It was a lot of turmoil in my life to go through that. Okay, there's a bunch of them here that I'm like, I think I'd like to sneak it onto the list, maybe.
I don't know. Like, which one do you think would? Because there's some ones that I like too, but I'm like, I understand, like, generally, maybe shouldn't be on there.
Yeah,
I know you like SteamWorld Dig 2 a lot, right?
I like it a whole bunch. But I also wouldn't mind getting Cuphead or Shovel Knight on there.
I feel like Cuphead kind of deserves a spot.
If you were gonna do one more, I think maybe Cuphead.
I think probably. Yeah.
I was so surprised when I saw Cuphead on Dean.
Yeah, I'm gonna. That list is live, right? So I can like tweet that, like, hey, this dude made it his number 7 game of the year.
It's like an old friend.
Yeah, it's Stockholm syndrome. Okay, So we actually have 14 games on the left now. Here's the stuff that we haven't like brought over, that we haven't nominated to the very final list. Mario plus Rabbids, Heat Signature, Shovel Knight: Spectre of Torment, SteamWorld Dig 2, Yakuza 0, Assassin's Creed Origins, Metroid: Samus Returns, and Torment: Tides of Numenera. So what I think we should start doing now is going through these games and deciding if we want to eliminate them for good, move them over into the prey, zone over there. I think I might actually start. I like Shovel Knight: Spectre of Torment a whole bunch. But
and so does Mike.
yeah,
Yes.
Both have it.
it was both of our number 9s, I think, when I was looking at Mike's list, and I'm like, hey, this is weird because mine's number 9 as well. But yeah, it's one of those games like, okay, once you start like pushing against some of this other stuff, yeah.
Right. It is lower on both of our lists,
Right.
and it is also kind of. I know it's like technically DLC, which doesn't like mean whole much, but it might be enough to get it over there.
It's so good.
It's
but
great.
Right, but I get like, okay, it's really going to appeal to the people who played a lot of those games when they were kids, and that's not everybody. Like, there's a lot of different kinds of gamers these days. So if you don't have that nostalgia, maybe you wouldn't like it as much. I think you'd still appreciate it. It's a good game, but it really spoke to me for that specific reason. So I can see it like not needing to be on our top 10.
Well, I had a couple questions about it.
Yeah, please.
Go.
So number one, even though it's an expansion pack, a DLC, but it really kind of makes a new game, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that's one reason why it's worthy of discussion. The other model, and I think this is really cool, is a developer supporting their game by essentially making a new game out of it. How many years? 5 years after it released? 4 years after it released?
Yeah,
Part of that is because it was like originally stretch goals, these campaigns. I don't
Right.
think they realized what they were getting into when they made those stretch goals on Kickstarter.
Yeah,
But
I think
like,
I'm
they
always
went
glad
through
to see
with
that
it.
game's like continuing to sell because I'm like, okay, good.
Right.
I'm glad they're still
And
they didn't
phone it in at all.
Awesome thing.
It keeps selling, and
Yeah.
most people enjoy it when they pick it up. Now, is it a top 10 game of the year? I don't know. I haven't had a chance to get to it yet. That's one of the things I'm playing on my vacation next week.
Right.
But I respect the hell out of it. Of the developer.
Yeah, it's one of those games where it's like when I played it on the Switch when the Switch first came out, and I was playing like that Blaster Master Zero, which is fine. I like that quite a bit. But Shovel Knight was like, oh no, this is like on a whole other level. It's like special.
Oh yeah.
So
As far as like these retro kind of games go, nothing's better than
exactly.
Spectrum
Yeah, it's in a class of its own in that category. But at the same time, I get that
And
that category is maybe less impressive than some of these other things at this point.
And the other thing that's really cool about the Switch, bringing that up, is that's got to be a great way to play it.
Oh, it's the best way to play it.
Yep. Okay, Mike, how about you make a cut and we'll see if anyone has any hard feelings about it.
I'll go ahead and throw one that I might be the biggest advocate for off the list and say Metroid Samus Returns. This was on my list isn't out yet, but spoilers, it's going to be on there. I did enjoy this a lot, but compared to some of the other things, it is kind of relying on a lot of like what the series has already done well before. It does introduce some new things, which is nice. It is really cool, and I think it was exactly the game we needed for like this long hiatus for Metroid. But
Yeah, for sure.
Why?
Because
isn't it just a remaster?
It's not a remaster; it's a remake.
Yeah.
Which
It's
implies like different
a
things,
reimagining
right?
almost.
Okay, so how is it different than the original game? Because I played this one on 3DS, but I never played the Game Boy version.
I think the mechanics are a lot different. There's you have like free aiming, you have this counter base attack thing. I think the map is largely similar, but again different. There's kind of like just design tweaks everywhere. I think the boss fights are completely different. It's almost kind of like, remember that Metroid Zero mission, like how it was like kind of a remake of Metroid 1. It's like that.
Which was a very fun game to play.
Yeah, super good. But in terms of just like why this was like the one we needed to come back to, because Other M was this experience that like tried to do something different that people didn't like, and then Federation Force was again very different, and a lot of people didn't like that. This was kind of the time to go a little bit back to basics for the series.
Yeah. So the thing I really had a visceral reaction about was the free aiming and the perspective, the 2.5. I really liked Metroid at 2D. And I had a very visceral reaction to it. I played the game. I probably put about 5 or 6 hours into it, and I'd like to get back to it, but my hands and the 3DS don't get along very well, and it just hurts after a little while playing it. But yeah, it just rubbed me wrong. It didn't feel Metroid to me.
See, I never had. It felt pretty Metroid-y to me. I kind of liked the 2.5D perspective again because it was a little different. With the 3D on, and I'm like one of the people who does still like to play 3D on sometimes, it actually did add some neat depth with the backgrounds, And it was cool how during some fights the camera could actually move around just a little bit to kind of make things seem a little bit more dynamic. Like, you know, the thing is this better than Super Metroid? No, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, my thing is I played a Metroid-style game that I liked better this year, and that was SteamWorld Dig 2. So I'm like, I really like what Metroid Samus Returns was doing. I think that it could have been better in some certain ways. They could have actually just stuck with some old art and made it 60 frames per second to make those controls feel even a little bit more snappier. And you know, the world I think looked really good in 3D, but if you had the 3D turned off, I don't think the game looked very good. But yeah, other than that, I was really enjoying it, but I also didn't finish it. So, okay, yeah, I'm gonna move it over to the Prey Zone.
Wait, do you hear?
Which I TM for that.
Jason's trying to get something in there.
Jason, is there a game from the right that you would want to move over to the elimination area?
Yeah, I wanted to say also, I felt that the Switch, because you talked about Switch having a good Metroid-like, the other one it has is Axiom Verge, which to me feels fantastic on it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you had a question for me.
Yeah, is there one from the finalist list that you would want to move over to the elimination area?
Well, I would want to move it over if there were, you know, part of me wants to move it over, but I was thinking about Torment Tides of Numenera a lot last night.
1 billion years in the future, a man found a way to cheat death. A seeker of knowledge and wisdom, he wanted to leave an unforgettable mark on the world. In his quest for everlasting legacy, he discovered ancient technology that allowed him to transfer his consciousness to a body of his own design.
And I was thinking there's a lot of baggage there and past stuff that I think makes people appreciate it more than others may not. As I was going through the history of how we got to Torment, it was on Kickstarter. Folks know that. That's no surprise. But Torment also is, you know, what they call a quote-unquote spiritual successor to Planescape Torment, which in itself is a game based on a D&D campaign setting. But, you know, you're going through it, and this Torment, Tides of Numenera, has, you know, it's based on a setting written by Monty Cook, who was one of the people who wrote the Planescape D&D setting, and added a lot to that over the years. And then you throw in the fact that it's got other writers who also worked on Planescape Torment game, and it's like, I appreciate it from all these other angles. And of course, the Numenera book itself, that I'm not sure other people who just came to it as a video game have. And I don't think it's fair to bring that perspective to it.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't it's not necessarily all self-contained within the game itself, the game experience itself. So,
well, the game experience is self-contained, but the fact that I have this, you know, legacy going back to like 1993 with it, and people that I've read in other forms, and I mean, Chris Aberlone is one of the writers, and you know, he's the Fallout guy, and he's been working on Pillars and all kinds of great things at Obsidian, and it's just that once I started thinking about it, it got so convoluted in my head, all these different paths and trails that lead to it, that I was wondering, okay, I appreciate this game so much because it's got a fantastic writing, you know, it's got this huge writing staff who contributed to it. You know, people like Bonnie Cook and Chris Avalone and Colin McNobe, and at the same time, they've done so much other things and so much more that, you know, it's really hard to get that appreciation over, if that makes sense. It's well, like the scope of what went into it is so big. It's really hard for me to distill why that's relevant to people who don't know that scope.
Yeah, no, I think it makes some sense. It kind of makes me think, because I kind of have the same thing going with Sonic Mania, to be honest, right? Like, a lot of my enjoyment of that game,
I'm sorry.
A lot of my enjoyment of that game kind of depends on a lot of other gaming baggage that goes along with it. Not literally just, like, the other Genesis Sonic games, but, like, kind of, like, the fact that, like, it was away for a while and stuff, you know?
Right, yeah.
And its leveling system is different than what you would get in a Divine, Divinity, or Pillars, or the old, you know, in older RPGs. And some of it comes about from your actions, like you would in a Skyrim game, and some of it comes from points. And upon reflection, I was thinking, well, you know, the leveling could be better.
Well,
But the story is fantastic. You can get through a lot of the game without having any comments. The environments are interesting. The places you go are interesting. But I don't think it cracks that top 10.
yeah, fair enough. Okay, I think that's totally fair. Okay, so we've moved it over to with Prey and Shovel Knight and Metroid.
But if you like old RPGs, you should play it.
Stephanie, is there anything from the nominees that you would want to eliminate right now?
I think for me, it would probably be Assassin's Creed Origins.
If you are the dealer, I'm out of the game. If you are the healer, means I'm broken and lame. If thine is the glory, then mine must be the shame. You want it darker. We kill the flame.
I think that's one I think I just don't think enough of us have played for sure.
I think it's good, but I don't know about top 10.
Yeah.
I'll say I played it, and I'm not sure if it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really like it. I thought it was kind of boring, but the parts that, like the boss fights, I thought were really great. I just wanted more of that and like fewer side quests, because these weren't like impactful, like Tides of Numenera side quests with like lots of story and lots of characters. This was like chores, like pick up eggs, fight off some enemies. It was just like super. I don't know. I didn't like it. I thought it was very routine.
Yeah, I remember when I was playing it, I got very excited when I got to Alexandria. I was like, "Oh, this is cool! Like, this is really neat how a video game can take me to this ancient, like, lost city." And then I walked around there, and then the things I was like told to do in there were just so boring to me.
They're exactly the same. No matter where you go, I feel like it's sort of squandering the beautiful environments. And I do like Bayek, and I feel like he's like a pretty cool character. And I like that.
Who's Bayek?
Cats. The protagonist.
The main
yeah.
Okay, for those who haven't played.
Yeah, I do like the main character, and I like that you can visit villages of cats, and you can stand next to them, and he'll pet them.
Game of the year. Game of the year.
Yeah, but couldn't save it.
Yeah, I can feel that. It's a game I think I also wanted to like more. I only played like 5 hours and just never clicked for me. Dean, how about you? Is there a game you would eliminate?
I had a question about Assassin's Creed.
Oh yeah, go ahead, ask it for sure.
So you're talking about the side quests. Could something like that, where it's being made by several studios across the world, have those kind of impactful side quests when so many different people are mucking around with it? Is that something that could be accomplished? Because you take a look at The Witcher, and you've got some impactful side quests.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's
but
possible.
I mean, they're very different games.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I just feel like maybe they didn't decide on the parts of the world that they wanted to explore with the side quest. It's not like there's this side, like there are a few side quests I feel like that go into what it's like to be living back then, like what it's like to have Greece on one side of you and Egypt on the other, and there's like this culture clash and also these like sort of, clashes between classes and things like that. There are like maybe a handful of side quests that sort of investigate that a little bit more. But more often than not, it feels like they're just there for you to level up, and you have to level up because you can't like go on certain quests or complete certain objectives without being at a certain level. So they kind of padded it out. So instead of like exploring the world or meeting new characters or, like sort of following a kind of thematic, mission, it just felt like it was just there for one simple purpose with nothing else, like no other substance around it.
Right.
But I do think it's possible, right? Like if you went to your different studios and said, "Hey, maybe you can take a look at this part of what society was like, or maybe explore this idea," and then they bring it all together, then maybe it would have been a little bit more engaging.
It does look like a game that was built by 500 or more people, right?
Yeah, it is beautiful.
It's just like some of those side quest writers may not have known what was going on in the rest of the campaign.
Right. Like JC said, it's like a very different game from Witcher, but I mean, Assassin's Creed Origins, I think, is the most Witcher-like Assassin's Creed. They definitely took inspiration from that, and I think that's maybe why we do feel it falls apart, because it doesn't have it doesn't have as much meaning in all of its actions as something like The Witcher does. All right, Dean. Let's get back to you. What would you eliminate from this list that's remaining? That's Mario plus Rabbids, Heat Signature, Steamroll Dig 2, and Yakuza 0.
I mean, I didn't really play much of any of these games except Mario, so I wouldn't actually feel like I need to pull anything off. I would have pulled off Assassin's Creed as well.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So I don't know if we necessarily need to.
Does anybody want to save any of these games? I guess is kind of the question.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would just point out that like 3 of these games I'm super duper into, but I don't think I'm going to be able to push any of them into the top 10. So I'll start with Mario plus Rabbids. This one I'll probably feel the best about eliminating just because outside of the tactical combat, everything else in that game is really boring and bad. Like the puzzles.
Yeah, no, like the gameplay is super fun. I still don't like the Rabbids. They didn't really take the opportunity to do anything interesting story wise. The same way like maybe Mario RPG did.
Yeah, maybe. I was kind of feeling I was like feeling like the Peach Rabbit and Mario Rabbit. I actually think is great. He does some good stuff. That's fine. I'm not going to make you like the Rabbids, Mike. That's not how I spend my time in my life.
So you kind of make it sound intriguing now.
You know what my kids did when we went to Toys R Us last weekend?
Oh God!
They grabbed one of the Minions' spark guns and ran through the store shooting each other with spark guns. I have total Minions. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. I was predisposed to hate this game because of the Minions. I think because the Rabbids, they're not the Minions, but I call them the proto Minion.
Yeah, they are the beginning. Yes.
Oh.
They're the ones
minions.
that came before. Yeah.
They're totally the Minions. Yeah. That's a very good way to say it, Steph.
So yeah, we can move that one over. I just think those the puzzles, they were just like block moving puzzles.
God.
They were really bad. And then I think the overworld was actually like really easy to get lost in, which made no sense. It was such a waste of time. Some of these other games that
that sounds like the Rabbids themselves. Maybe the Rabbids made the overworld.
Yeah. We could definitely just eliminate Yakuza 0. I don't think any of us have played it enough. And I guess it's a rather old game in Japan. It only just came out here, which I don't know, kind of makes it a little bit weirder. For me.
I will say though, I loved the main image we had in our review of it.
With the mini car, or was that something else?
Yeah, where he's got this huge aggressive stance and he's throwing you looking at you with a little slot car.
It seems like a really silly and like fun game where like all these characters are like supposed to be like these serious dudes and they're just totally getting into like cartoon circumstances a lot of times. I'm really glad that this is where the Shenmue legacy has led. I want to spend more time with it, but I just haven't. Heat Signature.
Ever since man first knocked man through a plate glass window, we have looked up at the stars and wondered, what if we could do that, but in space? Well, then that man would be in space, and someone would have to make all that space. And that's why Heat Signature took 3.5 years. You play a contractor, living in a remote nebula, taking on missions to break into spaceships. Breaking into spaceships is a ridiculous job that will certainly get you killed, but luckily there are easy missions you can choose.
Yeah, I love this game a ton. It's a game where you're just, you're flying around space. You are taking over other spaceships by infiltrating them with one guy. If you're that guy gets caught, a lot of times they'll like throw you out into space. And I remember the moment where I was like, okay, this game is for me. I was trying to infiltrate a rather hard mission. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna because you get options like when you go to take a mission. It's like, oh, do this easy one for a small reward, a medium, or a hard. I'm like, I'm gonna actually just try one of these hard ones. And I went in there and I tried to play it like I did all the other ones where I'll shoot my way through this. And I got caught and they threw me out into space through an airlock. And you have like about 100 seconds in game time before your character dies, and it gives you the option to remote control a spaceship to come like save you, like your spaceship. So I was able to like rendezvous, like basically like dock in space with myself, just floating out there at like thousands of meters per second with my ship, and like just sort of very carefully bring them together to save my character. And I'm like, okay, so I'm in rough shape because if I get expelled into space again, I haven't recovered any of that time. So now I have like 10 seconds left if I get shot out into space. But instead of like going back to my base and taking on another mission, I went back after that ship, got back at them, docked again. This time I stealthed my way through it, was able to kill everybody, and it was like, okay, this is very good. It was very dramatic, even though it's like got this very basic sort of simple 2D top-down visual style. But it just gives you so many ways to approach everything that I was really loving it. But no one else has played it, and there's other games that I'm more interested in making the top 10 than that. Finally, SteamWorld did too.
Did you use the Force in space?
Oh yeah, of course.
To get back to your ship.
I Mary Poppin my way back in for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, SteamWorld Dig 2. I would like this one to make the top 10, but I'm looking.
It's good.
I'm looking at the list on the left, and it's just.
Yeah, I feel bad about not playing this one.
Oh, yeah. Mike, you would love it.
I probably would.
You're going to love it. Yeah. So the thing about SteamWorld Dig 2 is, and I wrote this in my top 10. It has like the best, like just sort of gameplay loop of maybe any game I've played this year, where you start out on the surface and your goal is to go down underground to like find this MacGuffin or whatever. And you know, when you first go in, you can only go, you know, so far down before you've collected too many jewels, and now you can't really do much else because if you progress, you don't have the right tools, and it's taking too long, and the enemies are too dangerous. So you go back to the surface, and you turn in those jewels to get some money, and you can buy upgrades, and, you know, upgrade your character or whatever. And now next time you can go a little bit further and carry a little bit more, and find checkpoints that are further down, and these checkpoints are just pneumatic tubes that like shoot you up or down if you want. And then, you know, I love that loop. And then on top of that, like, you're very compelled to keep going down and searching that world because the world is very interesting. And you always feel like, okay, behind this next cavern or this next, past these next enemies, there's going to be something cool down here for me that's going to make my character even better. So you find yourself just going back and forth, just like circular, returning to the surface to, you know, improve your character, going back underground, back to the surface, back underground. And it's like it's so well paced that I blaze through this game, in a day a day or two, and it's about a 8-9 hour experience. So I'm like, I was just playing this nonstop. But yeah,
you can make it longer if you decide to just explore more underground and focus on just that, you know, getting materials and bringing it back loop.
Yep, and there's so much. You like 100% of the world, you can make it quite a bit longer too.
Yeah, and that's what my children do. They love that.
Yeah. And SteamWorld Heist is coming out for the Switch very soon. I'm going to be playing that nonstop. But I'm ready to eliminate this one. It's a bummer, but it'll be in my top 10.
We all have to make sacrifices, Jeff.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Actually, I have an idea. Let's eliminate Call of Duty World War II and put SteamWorld Dig 2 over there, and I'll feel much better. Okay. All right, fine. Okay, so we didn't actually make any exchanges there, but we've talked through those games, so I feel good about all the eliminations we made. Here's our top 15 so far, in no particular order. Super Mario Odyssey, Divinity Original Sin 2, Night in the Woods, Hellblade, Zelda, Persona 5, What Remains of Edith Finch, Nier Automata, Wolfenstein 2, PUBG, Sonic Mania, Horizon Zero Dawn, Call of Duty, World War II, and Cuphead. Okay, so I think what we should do, I'll reverse the order. This time, let's start with Dean, and we'll go counterclockwise. Dean, what game from this 15 would you want to remove?
You know, I'm afraid that Sonic Mania just doesn't do much for me. It's like,
Wait. Okay, stop. Stop for a second, Dean. Here's what I've always wondered this. What is your history with retro games? Like, were you playing the NES and Super NES and Sega Genesis, or did you kind of get in with like Microsoft and Xbox and stuff? What like
as an old guy, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was playing Pong when it came out, right?
Okay.
I was playing in television at home.
I had it in television too. God, that thing was better than Atari.
Yeah,
I didn't have an Atari console. I didn't have a Nintendo console. I was playing a lot of games in the arcades in those days. And then
Dean
I went
with a
from
leather jacket and like owning an arcade. That's the best image ever. Okay,
yeah,
keep going.
From the arcades to PC games, right?
Okay.
And so like sim games, strategy games.
That makes some sense. So
Commander.
So these games these mascot games that like me and Mike grew up on or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't have a Super Nintendo, right? So
right.
I mean, it's just not in my.
And like you didn't have a Genesis for
Mario.
Sonic.
I got to play a lot of Mario, but otherwise, no, I didn't play a ton of these.
Okay. All right. Okay. That makes sense. All right. I'm totally okay with that. I'm glad I actually solved this mystery for myself. Okay. So Sonic Mania, you played
Sonic
it, and
Mania,
it doesn't do it for you.
It feels like I played that game a long time ago, and I'm playing it again. I don't understand why I'm doing it.
Okay.
In your defense, it is very much a love letter to Sonic fans specifically, and a lot of the things that are different and new are kind of, again, nuanced more towards the fans of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I'm not going to raise a big stink if it has to get off.
Yeah, I think I think we're going to get to a point where people are going to raise big stinks, but I'm with you, Mike. I think this one might not be worth the fight. Sonic Mania, we've eliminated. That's fine.
Bye, Sonic. I love you.
So I think Stephanie, it's over to you. Is there something from the top 14-ish now that you would move over and get rid of?
Okay, so this isn't a personal attack.
Oh God!
And I admire and respect all of you.
Oh no!
And I consider you friends. But can somebody explain to me why everybody loves Super Mario Odyssey so much? Yahoo!
Here we go, off the rails. But you know, it's time to raise our sails. It's freedom like you never knew.
Oh God! Wow, going for the jugular.
Maybe after I have a stiff drink, I can explain it. I don't know.
Because I just don't like.
No.
So
you need to explain why you don't love it. So
start
much.
that. Yeah, because that's a good point. We're eliminating games, and what are the reasons you don't like it?
I just think it's so boring. Like I
It's
don't
the least boring
understand.
game ever made.
I don't see how any of these mechanics are new. You know, this was the Wii. You know, and I just feel like it's perfect for the Switch. I'm sure it's a good game. You know, and it's solid execution, but there's no story. There's it's just Mario, you know, and
yeah, but okay, all right, okay. So if you are coming to games looking for narratives or stuff you can get from, I think, a lot of other mediums, I could see Mario not really registering. I guess my thing is, if you are coming to games looking for what games do really well, which is interactions with systems, physics, controlling an avatar on the screen and seeing how it can poke and prod at a world and create interesting interactions. I don't know if there's actually a game on this list that does that better than Mario, except for maybe Zelda, maybe. And the thing about Mario is it's not just like well too. It's not, Divinity does it well in a very different way, where it is much more like a chemistry sort of system. Actually, again, similar to Zelda, but for Mario, it's not just like running around and jumping on people's heads anymore. It's nonstop assault of new ways to have this character interact with the world. Whether it's and a lot of that is the characters you could take over, like turning into Bullet Bill and trying to fly through an obstacle course or whatever, or taking over a dinosaur, which is kind of just a silly distraction, but it's so well paced because at any moment you can look in any direction and see, okay, this world was built for me right now to be like, what do I want to do? And if I look and see something that's interesting, you're going to go over there, and it's something you can play with and interact with and do whatever. And they've really spent a lot of time to keep that stuff interesting. I think, it's not. There's no story, and I think that's. I mean, I don't know. I always make this comparison, but it's one I haven't made maybe in a few months, so I'm going to do it again. Jazz doesn't have a story either, and jazz music's just fine. Like, I don't.
I think in the same way, it's okay for
the man who played jazz for years begs to differ. Jazz does have stories.
Jazz has stories, but so does playing Mario. But Mario doesn't have a story, and there are no lyrics in most jazz songs. Is what I'm saying. Like, no one's going to jazz and like, oh yeah, that's like. Oh, this is going to be winning literature awards, and Mario's in the same way. It doesn't have an inherent plot. Like, that's what I'm saying.
But even just looking at the controls, like, for instance, like, I think the last time I felt like the controls felt super great was, like, maybe, like, Ori and the Blind Forest. Just felt, like, super juicy and super responsive. And I don't get what people are saying about... I just don't understand what people are saying about, like, I think Super Mario Odyssey feels good, but it doesn't feel, like, amazing. Like, it doesn't feel like a revelation, you know? Like, so I don't understand why everyone's, like, so...
I don't know. I think...
I'm actually kind of with Steph on this, where, it's not terribly exciting to me, being able to throw a hat.
Oh, my God. That's not the game, though.
I mean... throwing a hat and not actually knowing exactly where I'm aiming when I'm throwing a hat is like
you're aiming in front of you. What do you mean you don't know where you're aiming?
Yeah, he always throws it in front of him.
Yeah,
okay, but you're not like the game is not throwing a hat. The game sometimes you throw a hat. Yeah, but that's not what the game. Like, you throw a hat and take over a creature.
A beautiful mechanic to me.
But that's okay. That's not. It's such a minuscule part of the whole game. Like, the hat is like just the new attack button. You'd be like, oh, Mario punched in Mario 64, so I don't like Mario because punching's boring. Like, what? Like, that's not. I don't know. That's just not enough for me to like be like.
So
I get what you're saying.
If I could intrude here for a second, so I'm kind of like in the middle ground between Mike and Jeff and Stephanie and Dee. I enjoyed it. I had to come up with a way. I had to figure out. Originally, it wasn't going to be on my top 10 list, and it ended up on my top 10 list. And for me, it wasn't because I felt it wasn't just because I felt the game was an excellent game. I have some problems for it. Jeff says the controls are tight. I don't feel that tightness, but that could just be, I have old man hands, so it could be that. I think the camera is bad, but I don't think any 3D platformer will ever get a good camera. But, and taking over things, I can take over a Bullet Bill, but I did that 3 levels ago, so why is it different here?
But it's only doing it one level, though, really. Like,
let me finish. What set it over for me was the joy that seeing this Mario evoked in my children. And how, for them, just talking about it, we would walk all the way to school, which is about 1.5 miles from my house, and they would talk the whole time about it. And seeing the way it lit their fires for more from this world and to see what else Nintendo could make and what else is possible with Mario, to me, is what enabled it for me. And when we talk about what stories are, some games have a narrative and some don't. Mario doesn't have a narrative very much. Really. But the narrative for Mario is what you do with it, in my opinion.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can I say some things?
Please, Mike, yeah.
I just, I'm not saying that this is the best game of the year only. I'm saying this is one of the, probably 5 best games I probably ever played. Just to get, talking about, to me, when I mean smoothness, what I mean is whatever I want to do in this game, I can do it without, it feels like, any kind of hindrance control-wise.
Well, I disagree, but that's because you have a skill that maybe others don't have.
Yeah, but the point is that the game enables him because he has that skill, where other games don't.
Right. No, I think, there is just, the hat thing, controlling the enemies, I think that's neat. I enjoy that. But even more so than that, just the way that they've really, keep adding things to Mario's arsenal to the point where you can do these ridiculous kind of acrobatic moves where you see this long way to go around to get to an objective, but instead of that, if you're really creative and kind of ambitious, you could, side jump onto the wall jump off that, throw your hat, like dive onto your hat, go up in the air more, face the other way, dive off that, and then get there. And the game rewards you for it. It's not like you're breaking the game. The game's like, oh yes, good job. That was really clever of you.
Yeah, they put like coins up on those places and like, oh yeah, you weren't supposed to get up here. Actually, no, we knew you were going to be doing this. Here's some coins just to show that we realized you would probably be trying this kind of stuff.
And the other thing is just a couple other things, like the unbound creativity, where every level is just kind of different and beautiful or unique, and each one offers something different, whether it's like a new enemy or something that you're kind of taking over. And sometimes it's just so fun and whimsical. Like sometimes you're taking over a creature, or sometimes it's like a dinosaur. Like one time, to get one of the moons, there's just a rock like in the way of it. You literally take over the rock, and now you're Mario as a rock. And it's not like a cutesy Mario rock. It's just a rock. And you're just very slowly rolling away from it. Like stuff like that just absolutely kills me. Just some of the surprises, some of the presentation.
Yeah.
We've talked before about the New Donk City, the festival scene, just how crazy fun that was. And then
now, how far? You know, for the people who may not have played it or have gotten to that far, how far is New Donk City? Because a lot of people talk about it, but if you didn't stick with the game long enough, how would you know?
I think that's just a few hours in.
Yeah, it's just a few hours.
Probably halfway point, I guess.
If you didn't get to New Donk City, I feel like you probably didn't play enough of the game to really have a full enough opinion on it.
It took me 10 hours to get to New Donk City.
I think you can dawdle in those other levels if you want, but if you like really kind of, the game does encourage you to keep moving a little bit faster than that. But I just want to add 2 points to Mike. So about the controls, it is a direct lineage of Mario 64, and what I really appreciate is they were like, okay, we've been actually trying to like simplify the 3D Mario games because the 2D games sell better. So clearly there's a disconnect for some people getting to 3D games. So how do we keep these 3D games simple? It's what they've done for a long time. That was Super Mario World or 3D World or whatever it was, which I liked a lot. I really do appreciate that game. What Odyssey does though is like, actually, no, our gamers are savvy. They are capable. They can handle these games just fine. Let's give them even more tools. And so as I'm playing this game, the idea of like jumping on your hat, that's something they showed in the trailer. I think a lot of people probably were playing the game like, I never need to do this. But if you actually like take the time to like just if you give yourself the chance, if you're like, actually, I am going to try that. It's a little complicated, but I'm going to try it. It's like, okay, I'm seeing where I can maybe use this to take some of these shortcuts. But as you're playing it, the controls are so tight and are so precise and are so accurate that when I am in situations where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to blaze through this part and I miss a jump, half the time that I miss a jump, I am able to, just from reflex, without thinking, throw my hat, jump on it, bounce, throw my hat again to like pause yourself in the air, and then do an air dive and get back to safety. That sort of recovery mechanic is something that I only ever really see in other games from speedrunners, people who are super professionals who like spend all their time with 1 or 2 games trying to perfect them. And I'm like, I'm doing this just because I've been playing this game for a bunch of hours, and I've and I just kind of figured it out, and I give myself the time to actually try it. But the point is that this game enables someone like me to feel that same experience, which I just that's where I'm like, okay, these controls are above and beyond some of the other games, or most other games. And then I don't know, the other big point would just be that. Well, actually, I can't remember it. It left my head. I can't remember. Oh well.
The one other thing I want to say too is just how much I enjoyed like the quote unquote end game here, where going through the campaign was super fun and kind of like a roller coaster, like nonstop. Then there was this completely other fun thing of going through, getting every single one of these moves, and each single one was, was kind of fun in its own way. And then the accomplishment I felt after doing all of that work. So basically, what I'm coming back to, like, if I could only make one assertion, if I had to only save Mario for the list and then walk away from the rest of this discussion, I would do it. I feel that strongly about
Mario's
Mario.
Not going anywhere. Mario's staying on this list. That's I feel that strongly about it too.
I still don't get it. Like, but
that's fair.
That's fine. No, that's fine. It's fine.
Well, I like Galaxy is another one of my favorites, but Galaxy is a bit more linear. It depends a bit more on kind of gimmicky motion control stuff. His moveset isn't as complicated, so you can't do some of these fun like recovery things we're talking about, some of these really interesting kind of skips and jumps.
And like the gravity physics are really good in Galaxy, but the physics are even better in Odyssey, where if you're running around the inside of a bowl, you could feel Mario like kind of like his momentum, his inertia is pulling you back down to the bottom of that basin. And I'm like, it feels so good. Like you could feel it when you're playing the game in a way that you don't feel that weight in so many other games. But my other big point was these moons, the way that they're set around the world. There's like several tiers of difficulty of finding moons, to the point where you might just stumble into one, but just find it, like, oh, that was really easy. That doesn't seem like a big deal. But the point is like, okay, yeah, you found one just sort of by exploring the world. That's fine. But if you see something like over there, like there's a one over there, like way off on the edge of the map. Like, how do I even get that? It's like hidden inside some bricks, and I see the bricks glowing. And you could take the time to figure that out, because there's a little bit of an adventure game element where, like, no, this is an actual puzzle, and I need to understand the way the world works to figure that out. And then like, okay, I got to actually fly a bullet bill over there. And this is like the one section where there is a lot of bullet bills. They're not in a lot of levels, but you take over the bullet bill, you fly him over there, and then you're like, okay, I'm actually not making it. You're like, okay, I got to shake the controller to go a little bit faster. It's like the one time where motion controls are required. And you get over there, you're like, okay, I actually figured that one out. But then you never really have to use that mechanic ever again, because the world it never tries to repeat itself. Everything is different. Everything is on a different level of difficulty, and it gives you the chance to explore and experience the game on your own terms. If you want to just keep finding the most easiest moons, you can. But if you get bored with that, there are a million challenges around the world at any time that it's like, okay, they've just built this world in a way that is so holistically thought out that it didn't stay on the list.
That sounds so inelegant to me. Like, why would you introduce one mechanic and then never use it again in the rest of the game?
Because
it's not variety. Because it's not necessary. Necessarily.
Because the game's not about any one mechanic. It's about you exploring this. The world is the game. The game is you like standing. Okay, so you go in the middle of the map and you look around, and like from any place you stand, you're going to see 3 or 4 things that are going to draw your attention. And I think it would be really boring if you went to each one of those things and they were exactly the same, which is a problem with a lot of video games.
The other thing too is when they introduce a mechanic, maybe you don't need it to do things, but almost all of them will help you do something more efficiently or better.
Exactly.
Like, you don't need to shake your controller to make the bullet bill go faster for most of the time.
It'll help you later on if you like once you realize that. Yes, exactly. Yeah, like the mechanics aren't necessary, but they do help.
Can I ask? It sounds a little like you guys are saying the moment-to-moment action you do with your hands is something that you guys really like. I mean, is this exactly like Cuphead then? I mean, do you feel there's a comparison there?
I mean, they're definitely mechanic-focused games, I guess.
Cuphead's not on the same level in terms of that feeling.
I have a question for Mike and Jeff.
Sure.
Imagine that you had limited use of your hands. How could this be? Because you're talking all about the things you could do. One thing I always try to think of with my Game of the Years is, okay, how can somebody who needs some sort of assistance to play the game experience it at a Game of the Year level that you're talking about?
Maybe they can't. I don't know. Like, maybe they can, I don't know. I think there's a lot. It depends on the nature of the disability. I think a person who doesn't have use of vision, I think would have a hard time with most of the games on our lists. People who, people who don't, maybe if you only have one hand, if you're an amputee, I think yes, you would have a hard time with most of the games on this list. Maybe you'd have an easier time with some of the other ones. And I think Able Gamers does a really good job of helping people understand that stuff beforehand. I don't think Able Gamers they never seem to penalize mechanics. I don't think they ever want to say we don't want these kinds of games to exist or to be praised because they are difficult for us. We want just as many accessibility options as possible in all games at all times. And if you go to that, I don't know, most of these games don't meet those requirements. I think you can find most of them don't have colorblind modes, and there's a lot of colorblind people. So
let's take it up one more notch. What about the person who doesn't have the skill to experience a lot of what you're just talking about? But can still appreciate? How could they appreciate this game in a Game of the Year manner?
Your kids. I mean, isn't the example your kids? Like you said, your kids were like they can't stop talking about it. Are your kids Are they like super skilled at everything, or are they just kind of playing it like a kid would play it?
They're totally playing it like a kid would play it.
I think
think that I was just thinking this might be a way for you to be to better bridge what you're trying to explain to Stephanie, who's not getting it.
Maybe I'm just dead inside.
No, I think it's fine. I think that looking at the games that Stephanie likes, I could see where she wants games to have these stories, these characters, and all this stuff that I get. There's a lot of good games, especially this year, that do that stuff really well. And Mario is not that game at all. I also didn't grow up with
Mario.
Yeah,
that might be part of it.
That's certainly.
But I think if this game had any other character other than Mario, it would have been people would have lost their mind more than they did. Because it's so good. It's like how does some developer out of nowhere with a new character make this game? But because it's Nintendo and it's Mario, I think there's expectations are set a little bit higher.
Really? I feel like it's the opposite.
No,
I feel like
sure.
it wouldn't be appreciated as much if it weren't
so
Mario.
If this
100,000%. If this was if Bubsy was this game, if it was Bubsy
or
instead,
Super Lucky's Tale,
or Super Lucky's Tale, and people were like, yes, they would have been like, this is a 14 out of 10. Like, yeah.
I think we gotta move on and discuss.
Yeah. Okay. So no, we have to do these conversations. That's good. That means we don't have to talk about Mario so much later. But Stephanie, Mario's staying on the list. What else would you cut?
Rejected.
I'll get my resignation letter away then.
For me.
What else would you cut? Yeah. Because I think we have to you have to make a cut, but people are also allowed to be like, say no, this one's definitely staying on.
Yeah. That's tough then. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe Cuphead?
Well, Cuphead and his pal Bugman, they like to roll the dice. By chance they came on Devil's Game, and gosh, they paid the price. Paid the price.
Yeah, I think maybe we can cut Cuphead. I
was wondering when we were going to talk about Cuphead.
Here we go. I'm cutting Cuphead because it was me and my friend Dean.
Get out of here, Cuphead. Nobody likes you.
I mean, if we're talking about being able to play a game you're not skilled at, Cuphead is that for sure. But that's not why I would ever cut it. I it's
like
on my
it.
top 10. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But I could see it like it's maybe not gonna. It's not going to outdo a lot of the games that are left.
Right.
I think in terms, we did give it the most beautiful award. It is in terms of visually, beyond everything else. But I mean, Stephanie, what is it for you that you like? And maybe it doesn't need to be here.
Well, it's tough. I mean, I think like the controls are nice and tight, and like it feels nice, and it obviously looks super great, but it doesn't really do anything super innovative. I feel like, I think if it didn't look the way it looked, it wouldn't be getting as many like accolades. I think a lot of it's the aesthetic, and they nailed it.
That's important. That's important for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm there with you.
I've got a problem, and it's hard for me to divorce Cuphead from this. But every time I see the art style, I think of Popeye from the 1930s.
Yeah.
And I think about this episode where the little black boy looked like a monkey.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And Cuphead doesn't do this. Cuphead doesn't do this.
Right.
But that thought always comes into my head, and it's really hard for me to. There's a dissonance there when I see that.
Yeah, the game doesn't include that stuff. I think some people made the argument it doesn't address it in any way, and it's kind of a no-win scenario there. I will say that when my wife saw me playing it, she was like, "This game is ugly. I don't like it. I don't know what it is about it. I think it's ugly." Yeah, she's like, I think it was because it was reminding her of the racist cartoons. I think so. It's kind of what she explained. I think over time to me. Yeah, but that's not a feeling I had personally, and I was enjoying the look. I think they nailed it. I think they did kind of the best they could do while trying to borrow from that style, which was a very problematic style. And they didn't include any of that stuff. So it's like, what do you do there? It's a no-win scenario. I don't necessarily know. It doesn't need to be on the list for that reason. I think Stephanie kind of nailed it when it was like, if it didn't have this look, maybe it wouldn't get as much of attention. And maybe it's just a solid run and gun shooter underneath it all, and that's
as somebody who's a big fan of the Cleveland Indians, I have a long history of liking things that kind of also have problematic depictions of
and it's like it's always hard to reconcile that stuff within yourself, and it's like but this game doesn't even have that stuff. It's so weird, but I know what Jason's saying. It's like it's hard to divorce it in your head. But
I can't. And that's probably not
totally
fair.
Okay.
That's probably not fair to Cuphead, but
but it is the way you feel.
See, for me, like I like watching a lot of those old cartoons a lot. Like when I was a kid, it goes back to my weird Disney thing to a point where my knowledge experience of them, like I know about that stuff, and it is weird, but it kind of goes beyond that in ways for me too. About the golden age of animation that people call it. Where it's weird because it's like something that like I simultaneously want to celebrate but also acknowledge some of the problems. It's just like when he talks about history or like the founding fathers, right? The way you have to like kind of get around the fact that most of them were slave owners, but also here's the statue of them and we revere them and dress our kids up like them for their pageants.
Yes, it's complicated.
I kind of like have come to appreciate it more than I definitely did at first. The skill, it's sort of is interesting to me that if you really have a great run through something, that you can get through a level that you think is impossible, and feels really good when you get through it. But I feel like there isn't enough sort of regard for most of the players here, where it feels like it is designed for people who are esports athletes or
it's not quite that high, but
and that if it's an all or nothing difficulty level, right? And
but I mean we're not.
Play it on
Dark Souls
level.
is that. I think there's a lot of games that are like that, and I don't necessarily know we need to be holding that against.
I kind of want to address because you and Jason have said something about this, where there's that perspective where you're going to lock out people who can't play the game. There's a lot of easy games that maybe lock out people who need something challenging to be engaged, want something to be interesting and challenging. There's a lot of people who are just getting to the end of the game. Doesn't necessarily mean anything if it was just a gimme. And that's, again, another reason why I do like some of these harder games, like Cuphead. That's probably, in fact, outside of the art, the difficulty is probably the thing I enjoyed the most about it, was that it was a challenge, and I actually could feel accomplished when I beat it, which really does not happen that much anymore.
Yeah, there's the thing. My wife's in early education or early childhood education, or I can't see. She needs to teach me words. Basically, she's a teacher for like first graders and kindergartners and stuff like that. And there's this idea where if a kid is bored or not engaged, you don't make things easier for them. You give them more rigorous activities. And so I think while Jason and Dean, you guys have brought this up multiple times, where it's like these games they require skill sets that some people don't have, and should the game maybe be penalized for that stuff, or should we at least be discussing that? And I think we can discuss that, but there is the other end that Mike brought up. Let me just finish my thought real quick, Dean, and then absolutely.
Okay.
On the other side of that, I do feel this way where if I'm playing a game and it's not challenging me in terms of just the simple physical interactions with the game, a good chance I'm gonna get bored, no matter how good you think your story is. There's me out there as well, and I'm glad that there are games like Cuphead for me. I'm glad that Mario does have this higher skill ceiling, because it's like, wow, Nintendo's still making games for me. Like I thought they were gonna keep going for that blue ocean casual audience. No, they're gonna go for someone who's been playing games for 30 years and has all these skills. Like that's awesome. I have to praise this because I want more of this for me. But go ahead, Dean.
Well, I'm just kind of looking at some of those facts around this game. Like, we know that most people have finished this. Like maybe 8% of the people have finished it, something like that.
But that's not too far off from most games, though.
And they have the simple mode. And in their talk last week in Montreal, they said most people are not playing the simple mode.
Right.
And it's because they put the penalty in there if you can't get to the final boss if you're playing simple mode.
I don't know if you could say for sure that's the reason. I think because I don't know. I think if you look at the numbers, a lot of people don't play on easy.
I'm not motivated to play the simple mode because of that, right? And so I do want to experience what it's like to play all of these different levels because the levels look so interesting. and I would play something on an easier mode, but not if it sort of denies me, the ending of the game, right? And and that's sort of like a design thing to me. It's like, we know this is their first game. We know they wanted it to make it hard. We know they wanted it to remind them of what they were playing when they were young kids. But we've had decades to learn about what's good design.
I don't. But I think I would hesitate to call this bad design, though.
When 80% of the players, are not choosing the simpler option when they can't finish the game.
Mike Dean.
That to me seems like it seems like just a poor design choice.
Maybe I think most people don't play on easy. We have already eliminated Cuphead. We should move on to keep things.
Yeah, the big takeaway is each of us have at least some kind of problem with Cuphead.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I would just say maybe I don't think it's bad design to have the way Cuphead is made. At least it's no worse than games that are too easy that are on this list, or games that don't necessarily try to challenge you in terms of its mechanics. But yeah, okay, we can move on. Let's see. Call of Duty World War II.
This day have set upon a mighty endeavor. Souls will be shaken with the violences of war. In this hour of great sacrifice, we shall prevail.
This is getting epic, man.
What's up, Dean? I played this game. I think the campaign was it was boring. It didn't have anything to say. It was there was maybe only one set piece moment in the entire game that I remember, let alone even maybe slightly began to enjoy, and that was the night mission in Paris. Beyond that, the rest of the game just didn't work at all in terms of its campaign. I think the multiplayer is I guess it's better than what it's been in the past couple of years, maybe. But it's also just Call of Duty 4 again. It really just feels like Call of Duty 4 again, and that we're 10 years away. Like, it's been 10 years since that game came out. So I don't necessarily know. Like, for people that want Call of Duty every year, hell yeah, I'm happy for you. I was that person for a very long time. But even when I was that person, it was never going to be that high on my list, just because it's like, okay, this is the same thing. This is copy and paste. But yeah, if you want to try to save it, Dean, let me know.
Well, I don't know that I would save it. It is. It's another one that we're just sort of born to argue about. I think. Multiplayer in this one is better. It's just. It's learned from a lot of the other modes that didn't work so well in the past. Like, they added that war mode, which is like Battlefield, right? So you could say they're copying Battlefield by adding this sort of almost narrative-based or story-based approach to a particular multiplayer battle, where you have stages of
progression,
objectives you complete. But it turns out it's pretty well done. It's like the few maps that they have for it have very exciting outcomes, right? Like it comes down to like the last 10 seconds, last minute of gameplay, and whether or not you're really on the ball shooting as you do. Infinite Warfare got to the point where it was too hard for me. Like, not only did you have to sort of run, aim, and shoot, but you also had to jump and fly in the air.
Yeah,
while doing that.
Right? Yeah, I think Advanced Warfare had maybe the best of all of those. Because you can only move in so many directions when you were jumping in and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but,
so they simplified, the movement back to, infantry combat, and so the enjoyment of multiplayer is just so much more there. Like, I'm playing it probably twice as much as I did last year. And then I think some of those, the story didn't say bother me as much as it did you. I think, they did stick to a theme, which is, how much would you do to sacrifice for somebody else? Right?
Yeah, I just think mechanically they didn't really deliver on that.
Each of the missions, each of the big story points, it revolved around, this sort of comradeship, or, the brothers in arms sort of idea. And, there was enough variety in there for me, like with the the French Resistance mission. You had the D-Day mission, of course, and then that the Hurtgen Forest mission, where the artillery shells are exploding in the trees above you. Like I thought that was one of their better set pieces, right? So there's just enough in there. It's well done.
Yeah. Let me ask you this.
Better than previous Call of Duties, right?
Yeah. Real quick, Dean, try to keep that microphone still, because there's the cord when it hits the table, it makes like a little knocking noise. Okay, so are you going to try to save this game though? Like, is there something like on the list above that you would knock off instead? I mean, I'm sure there maybe is, but I like that you think you can maybe argue off.
Well, I'd say it's one of my top 3 on this list that's remaining.
Yeah, but compared to PUBG and Wolfenstein,
number 1. Right?
Yeah, compared to PUBG and Wolfenstein 2, like the other big shooters on this list, one's multiplayer, one's single player. Like, do you think you could argue it above either of those? Because I don't think
I mean, I would knock out Horizon, compared to Call of Duty here.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but we'll give Horizon its chance in a second, because I think or we could just do that one now. I mean,
well, I think the bigger question is, did enough of us play to give it fair consideration?
Did enough of us play what?
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty.
I mean,
I was going to, and just specifically so I could argue against it, and then I just couldn't bring myself to do it.
The last Call of Duty I played was on PS2.
Right. Like Dean, do you feel passionate enough to be like the only one pushing for the game on the list of Call of Duty, or are you more interested in Hellblade? Because I have issues with Hellblade. Like if I wasn't calling Call of Duty off the list, I might be taking Hellblade off the list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it deserves to be in the top 10. So I think I'd hold out a little bit more before we get through some of these other discussions.
Okay,
maybe.
All right, yeah, that's fair. We got 12 games here, so and we definitely have some other ones we can go through. Okay, so you're not going to let me get Call of Duty off the list. Then I'm not going to try to get Hellblade off, because you'll be that's not going to work.
I do want to hear what other people think of Hellblade.
In this waking nightmare, where all dreams come true, you searched for control, a way to pull through. When you were in love, you left him in tears.
So, you know what? Hellblade is kind of something. I played a bit of it, and I really, really appreciated some aspects of it. I really liked the story. I really liked the acting, the world. It's just one of this. We're kind of talking about. It was one of those games that I wish was mechanically more interesting, so that like the puzzles and the combat kept me a bit more engaged, a little bit more motivated to go back into it. I think I do understand what you liked about it, though, Dean.
I do too.
It's actually not something I would. It's not something I would actually very strongly advocate for removing from the list, because I do appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, I'm on the fence there. That's one we could talk about that one a little bit more. My actual choice here would be What Remains of Edith Finch.
I'm sure my mom was just trying to protect me. Now that there's only one of us left, I thought it was time I heard the stories. But now I'm worried the stories themselves might be the problem.
It's a game. I like it.
Maybe we believed.
I see what they did well, but really, I more than anything, the moment that we chose for game, it's like standout moment this year was the cannery scene. I don't think the game ever gets close to that throughout the entire experience beyond that. And most of the time, you are just following words around, not paying attention to the world that they built, and just getting the story sort of told to you audibly and as you're reading it. And so you really feel like you're just sort of being dragged along on this very narrow, linear path. And then when you do get into the memories of the Finch family and how they all died, the mechanics in these, like the idea is like, okay, we're going to put all the interesting mechanics in these memories, but sometimes it's just like a cat jumping around a tree and it doesn't feel very good, or it's this slithering tentacle And it's like, okay, I'm just dragging myself along here. This is not. I don't feel like I'm learning anything about this character really. Like I understand that's what they're trying to do some metaphors here. And there's like a scene where a baby drowns in the bathtub because the parent was inattentive. And I'm just like, this is like some manipulative shit. It doesn't help that I have an infant at home. Just thought that scene was very, very bad. Like it was just not.
That's where I had to stop.
Yeah, it's like you can put that in a game. But you have to stop and think like, what are we actually trying to get the player to feel? I'm like, what is the point here? Like, okay, so this wasn't like I'm just supposed to hate these people because this is the only person's fault here is the person who didn't pay attention to the baby. Like I have no sympathy for this person. This is absurd.
I think your best point is that the game never gets as good as
It definitely never touches that. That scene.
Cannery level.
That scene is spectacular. If the rest of the game was even close to that, I would want to keep it on the list, but I can't just because the rest of the game I think is too linear and uninteresting. Go ahead, Stephanie. I'm sorry.
I think that's fair, but like I will say if you pay attention to your environment, like for instance when you're in Sam and Calvin's room, if you look at the door, you'll see that Sam, because Calvin passed away when he was really young, they're like marking their heights on the door.
Yeah.
And like Calvin's just stops and Sam's keeps going. So I feel like there are like little details around the house.
Definitely is that stuff.
Yeah. I do think it is a little one note. I mean, I love it, but it is a very linear experience. And I can see some like criticisms about are some of these mechanics just for the sake of mechanics. Like I feel like some like really fit really well, like when you're swinging, or obviously the cannery scene is just like really awesome. But yeah, I would be okay with taking it off the list just for the fact that it is a little, it kind of stays on the same level for most of the game. But I do think it's really, it's just like I'm glad that it exists, and
sure.
I think it pushes us the way sort of Gone Home did.
Yeah, I admire the
in
attempt
terms of
for sure.
storytelling.
Yeah,
just like the cinematic experience of it, I think is really, really crucial for games.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, exactly. I'm glad these kinds of games are out there.
I liked it a lot too, but like Gone Home had a fairly powerful ending, as I remember. This ending was just disturbing to me in that you never found out what's bugging this family. Like, what is this problem they have? Why does it happen to?
I get what they were trying to like. It seemed like they were like saying that they were doing this to themselves a lot of the times just because they had it in their head.
It's like imagination.
Yeah, that it was inevitable, and and they were getting too caught up in their own curse that they put on themselves. I got that. But I do agree, Dean, that they didn't quite hit that hard enough. I don't think that. I mean, maybe they were trying to avoid the risk of coming across as heavy-handed, but I feel like for the rest of the game they didn't care about doing that. So I don't know.
For me, it's like Gone Home.
Yeah,
it's like a less emotionally resonant Gone Home.
I think
with a little bit better mechanics.
That's how I felt
that's
about
not
it.
Too far off. I think that's pretty close to accurate.
I liked Gone Home a lot more than this one.
Yeah,
I think that's true too. Okay, so all right,
but it is certainly worth the consideration. And
yeah, I'm glad we talked about it for sure.
And I certainly wouldn't, ding anybody for wanting to keep it or putting it on their list.
I'm glad we were able to talk it out. Okay, so let's.
And I'm glad it got made.
Yeah. So all right, let's keep things moving. All right, so Mike, I think it's back to you to help us really get this down to 10. So I think what do we have? We have 11 games. So we need to just cut one more.
I think we should talk about PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Because as we appraised it, it was still an early access game. So first, I think we should talk about why we feel an early access game is worth being included.
Yeah, my thing there is because it doesn't matter at all, like even a little bit. Like a game is a game. Whether the person who came up with the mechanics, the rule set, the way things interact, the visuals, all that stuff, whether they feel it's finished or not, doesn't really, in the end, affect me when I'm actually going through and playing it. Now, does it crash? Yeah, but I've played some retail games that have crashed. Prey crashed on me a couple times when I was playing it.
I lost 2 saves in Eat a Fish, and I lost a save in Divinity.
Right. Yeah, we're at a point where that stuff, like, there's no distinction there. But even if there was a distinction, I don't care. Like, that doesn't matter. Like, I look at they changed the rules to football every year. They're still working on football, a game that's been around for a century. And does it matter that someone's still like figuring out those rules to me? No, it's just the game that it is. Like, and I'll go out there and I'll play it however it is. Like that's fine. And to me, PUBG fits in that same mold where once I'm actually experiencing it, the early access game, 1.0 game, that doesn't matter. Once I'm in there, it is a profound experience in terms of multiplayer actions.
Now, my second question about this is, are we recognizing it for the gameplay and the stories that come out of it, or are we recognizing it because of the phenomenon?
I don't know. I'm recognizing it because the game itself, the idea, the setup, the execution really is up there. That. I mean, the phenomenon is one thing, but like that's. Had it not really caught on with everybody, I still would have been playing it as much as I was. I mean, it helps that there's always a match ready to go. Hell, it helps that, like, if you want to start up a game with 100 people in it, it takes 5 seconds, and that's great.
So if this game was one where there was only like 5,000 of you playing it, instead of,
that would hurt
millions of copies.
Yeah, that would hurt.
You would still feel pretty strongly about it.
Right. Yeah, as long as I was still able to get into a match pretty quickly. But that's a different thing.
Yeah, but I mean, so what makes you feel so strongly about it?
Yeah, so it is one of the most intense games you could ever play. And it has these really huge peaks and really deep valleys in terms of your emotional state, and it gives you a chance to get complacent, which is, I think, really important because as soon as you get complacent, something will go wrong, and then your heart begins racing immediately again. Like you have time to explore this world and to think like, oh, if I just get this next good gun that I'm looking for that I know I'm good with, I have a really good chance here. So you start thinking about that too much, and you start like going from house to house, and you start holding down the shift key to go into boost on your car, which makes a lot more noise, which can draw attention to you, and you start taking a lot more chances because you're like, I haven't seen anybody yet. I'm fine. 50 people already died. I'm good on the circle. I'm in the safe zone. I'll just keep going. And you just stop thinking, like, at any moment, someone's going to be around the corner. And then, yeah, boom, there they are. And you're like, oh, God, I have to shoot them. And you, like, panic for that whole period. And it's like, if you pull it off and you are the one that does get the aim on them and you shoot and you kill them, it's completely exhilarating. But if you fail in that moment, it's also still completely exhilarating because it's so horrifying. It's like a horror game. I don't know. It's a really special experience in terms of figuring like the way Call of Duty 4 felt in 2007 is how this game feels now. It does feel like this is going to be the way people are going to be thinking about multiplayer shooters for the next decade. And it is just because of all these very important interactions and the storytelling that does happen emotionally throughout any one match.
Have you played Fortnite? Fortnite's Battle Royale?
I have, yeah.
Do you feel like it doesn't really compare? It's not the same?
It doesn't really compare. So it's basically the exact same setup. And the reason it doesn't compare is, for one, the map's not quite as interesting. So, you're not really like, you're not building up memories in these spaces in the same way, just because it doesn't feel as authentic. I also think that the shooting mechanics in Fortnite are, I'll get in some technical terms, it's hit scan instead of actually physically rendering the bullet in the world. So if you see a dude across the map, you don't have to lead him, and you don't have to worry about bullet drop. And that makes it easier, and that's more accessible. And I think it may be a better console experience. But just like comparing the games against one another in a platonic way, like in a perfectly fair way, having to deal with the consequences of physics in the world and the bullets dropping and having space between you and your enemy really matter just adds so much more dynamic. It's just so much more dynamic and interesting, and each moment feels so much different as opposed to like, okay, I'm 10 feet away from someone in Fortnite, and that's the exact same feeling as being 100 feet away from them, except for maybe I have to aim at a slightly smaller target. But it's still whatever. Fortnite is good, and it's getting a lot of people into it for a million reasons. It's just I've said this elsewhere. If Fortnite had launched in a world exactly as it is, in a world where PUBG didn't exist, it wouldn't have caught on the same way. I think for for many of these reasons, I feel pretty strongly about it being at least on the top 10. It's a game I put 400 hours into this year before it came out, like in 1.0.
So can I share why? So I have reasons why I think it should be on the list. I don't play it like you do. I enjoyed the time I played with it, and that's all I needed.
Right.
But for me, it's not just what I did with it, it's what other people were doing with it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no game out on the market right now that came out this year that's allowing for the emergent storytelling.
Right.
And for the player creativity and tactics. You shared one yesterday on your Twitter, which would be December 21st.
Right.
With Matt Boy, with who?
Matt Pascal. Although he was there, Matt Bodega on Twitter. I can't remember.
Matt Bodega. Thank you.
Yeah.
About how you guys came up to this house.
Yeah, I was actually just watching that, but yeah, you could explain it. Yeah, go ahead.
Had a couple goons inside, and what was so fascinating was like, okay, well, let's set up this one person as bait in a car.
Yeah.
To try to lure these guys out.
Yeah, they had their car. The people inside the house, the enemies, had their car. They drove it up to this house, and they were looting the house. And the whole team saw this happen. The whole hero team, I guess. And so Matt's like, I'm just gonna go. I have an idea. I'm gonna go get in their car. I'm gonna honk the horn and yell in the game world so they can hear me. I got your car. And I'll drive away. And when they come out to shoot me, you shoot them. And he's playing like with Will Smith and Matt Pasquale and Danica Harad from Waypoint. And like some were like, okay, that's a good idea, but then Will Smith's like, no, you're just gonna get killed. And Matt's like, no, I'm just gonna go do it. Time to go to work. And just runs in there, gets in the car, honks the horn. It's like, I got your shit, and drives away. And you see inside the windows all this movement. Like everyone's like, okay, what's happening? Oh God, our car. We need our car. And the guy pokes his head out the window. And Matt Pasquale, the guy who's like, this isn't gonna work, pulls up his gun, shoots him, and kills him almost immediately. And is like, oh my God, we got to kill it. It worked. I can't believe it. And Matt's just driving away in circles, like still freaking out. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe it worked. This is the best plan I've ever done. And that in every match, there is the potential for moments like that. And
every match has that potential.
Yeah.
And there's millions of matches being played every day.
Exactly. And it's like, and you almost always come away with the story, even if a lot of times that story is, I freaked out. Like Mike, we played together that one game, and and I died, and I'm like sitting there trying to help you. You hadn't played a ton, and you were like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna crawl through here, and you I could hear you starting to get a little bit of that antsiness in your voice, and the other teams were fighting, and there was like maybe 3 or 4 teams left, and you like looked over to try to see what like one of them as they were coming by, and they still hadn't noticed you, and you accidentally hit the gun button, the fire button. And they basically were just like, oh my God, and they just looked at you and just killed you instantly as soon as they knew where you were. And it was just like, oh man, yeah, and it was just your jitteriness, like actually played in the world. It was very good.
So my favorite time, I was playing with some other people I know, and it was so I'm laughing now just thinking about it. All we didn't even care if we won. All we did was go around. We all got vehicles, and we just decided we're going to run over people. That's all we did. We didn't even shoot once we got our cars. We just stayed in the cars, and we just kept trying, and 2 of us, ended up hitting each other and running over each other after we knocked one of ourselves out of a car. And that's a whole other story. But, it was just that. That's all we did, and we had a blast doing it. And we didn't have to do any of the normal game-to-game shooting that goes into the gameplay. We didn't care about the goals of the game. We just had a blast being stupid.
Yeah,
and that's one of the things I love about this game is you can play it the way you want to play it.
Exactly.
And a lot of multiplayer shooters, you have to play the way the game's designed.
Right. It gives you the time and space to explore the world and to do things how you want. And if you want to take it very seriously, you can, and there's a lot of fun in that. If you want to be silly, you can do that. Like I took a motorcycle onto a roof by driving it through a house, and I was able to like there was a little gap in the fence on the roof, and I was able to drive it off there and onto another roof. And so people walking through the city would see me driving a motorcycle across these roofs. And yeah, that's like, I don't know, I really enjoy that kind of stuff. But
so basically PUBG.
Exactly, yes. But Mike's right. We do need to keep moving. So the point is, we have 11 games here. We still need to cut one. I was able to cut Edith Finch. Does anyone have one on this list that they would also want to cut? I'm thinking
Does anybody want to offer up one of their own babies, maybe?
I only have one game on the list. I'm keeping it.
Fair enough. Yeah, and I actually like Divinity. So
we haven't talked. Yeah, we haven't talked about Nier.
Let's cut Nier.
I would be okay with cutting Nier because I understand why it is a little easy, a little repetitive, but I love the way it switches between different mechanics from top down to bullet hell to. You know.
I'm gonna say this. I think the game we kill is Call of Duty, and it's threefold. Right. Number one, most of us didn't play it, so we can't give it a fair evaluation one way or the other.
And one person who played it doesn't like it.
Yeah. Number two, it's not an interesting game. I'm sorry, Dean. You think it's interesting, and there's millions of people who play it who think it's interesting, but they're playing it not for the single player. They're playing it for the multiplayer. And there's games out there that do multiplayer and probably do it just as well, if not better. And multiplayer shooting is something that, to me, is possibly one of the most, just in those kind of modes, is possibly one, without a theme that's interesting, it's possibly one of the most boring things you can do in a video game.
I disagree with that, but I think overall you're probably right.
Yeah, it's like I just don't get why anybody, especially somebody who's coming new into a series like a Call of Duty, who may not have played it, gets in there and says, "Oh, okay, let's go play," and I'm going to get shot by all these people who've been playing it for years. That sounds like a lot of fun to me. It's not.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I think that's fair. I like
the third.
I still like Call of Duty overall, but go ahead.
The third is I don't need another World War II story. There's enough of them.
Well, if they would have done a good job.
What I want is something new with ideas for World War II, which Wolfenstein 2 does.
Okay, let me say, someone who did play both of these games, I don't like Nier, but I really don't like Call of Duty.
You still don't like Nier?
No.
Have you played more of it?
I think he's done. I played a little bit more, but I think I am probably done because I've gotten into the spoilers.
Have we all played Nier?
I
played Nier.
So. Have you played?
So Nier is.
I
think it's very boring.
Only one who hasn't played it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty boring. Even when you're switching between the mechanics, like they're not that different. They have the same control scheme. You're just like, honestly, it's just a camera move. And the enemies don't really change that much. And the big moments, like I remember early on that huge boss battle, where the whole oil rig came to life. That was cool, but there wasn't a lot of that stuff. And the other ones weren't as good as that one, at least visually. But the good stuff is this really great story that takes this very old sci-fi trope of robots that have feelings and moves it forward in a way that maybe film and even maybe a lot of sci-fi novels haven't really taken the time to try to do recently. I think some of the twists were telegraphed really hard and weren't surprising at all to me. Now that I've looked into the spoilers, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I actually thought that was the case. I thought that was already implied, and I'm like, okay, but I guess it was supposed to be a twist. But as it got further, as I was continuing to read along in these spoilers and listening to a few spoiler cast episodes, it continued to just keep pushing things and keep getting weirder and keep dealing with the implications of this world in a way that I really appreciate and was surprised by, and does it in a way that it kind of had to be a video game for it to work. And I really appreciate that. I am glad that that was the case. I'm glad when I kind of unraveled everything that is Nier Automata, that underneath it all, if it wasn't a video game, this story wouldn't have worked as well. And I think that for me, I mean, Call of Duty has very few redeeming factors for me. But that easily puts it over Call of Duty. I know that's not going to convince you, Dean, but I feel like I don't know. I just feel like you're not going to be able to convince anyone else about Call of Duty.
What I love about Nier is, just what you talked about, the way it subverts the trope. But I enjoy the mix of gameplay and the way
a lot of people
changes. The way it changes from, kind of like an old shump to an action game and back at places.
If you like variety in your gameplay, can I suggest Super Mario Odyssey? Sorry, keep going.
Hey, I'm the one who put it on my list. I don't need to be sold. But to me, it's a surprise to see it in a game like that. I think it at the same time that it's subverting a trope, it's surprising and delighting you with little things like that. And to me, that just shows a real intensity of creativity coming not just from the way they wrote the game, but from the way they designed it.
It's just no Bayonetta 2.
And I really respect that.
I think it's also it's really committed. Like, it kind of doubles down by making you play through it 4 times, and like the first time you die, I think just really sets the tone for the whole thing. So I think it does a lot of really gutsy things.
Yep.
And like it's not apologetic about what it is, and I think it's really great.
I agree that is good. A game with confidence is always a marvel to see. I think a lot of times, because I think a lot of people put out their games and are like, we don't know, please like it. This game's like, fuck it. This is Nier Automata. Deal with it.
2B has a big butt.
Mike, what did you have to say about it?
Oh, it's really weird, and 2B has a big butt.
I thought you were making a play on words, like, we have a big butt here, and like as a caveat, but no, you just said butt.
But I like Nier because it is. I do like Nier because it is kind of weird and angsty and a little different than a lot of other things.
And I'm okay with that. But also, now that we have 10 games, because I've cut Call of Duty, and we got to keep moving. Sorry, man. Sorry, I played it, and I think if the single player had any redeeming factors for me, if it wasn't like such a negative like that, like I wrote about this, I'm not going to talk about it here, but just like the one black character, the way they handle him is so bad that it's legit, like I think a huge detriment to the game. But yes, we can move on. So Nier Automata is number 10.
And to be fair, Jeff wrote about that, and we had a huge back and forth about that. Remember?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you made sure that we were like being accurate about that. I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
And we really took that to task on the editing for that. So I mean, it's not like this is just something Jeff felt. This was something that came across.
Yeah. So I know we're getting to a time where people feel like they're gonna have to start leaving. Let's get this list in order.
Well, we got the hard part done.
Yeah. Maybe. Don't ever say that, because we never know what's gonna happen. Okay. So Horizon Zero Dawn. Maybe we haven't talked about that one enough. I do feel like the people that like it enough for it to still be on the top 10. We do feel that way, right?
Yeah, I liked it quite
a bit. Okay, actually, here's what we should do. Let's try to break this list up into like 2 sets of 5, a top 5 and a bottom 5. I'm going to move it down a little bit. What games should be in the top 5 for you guys?
Well, we haven't talked about Zelda at all, huh?
Yeah, we haven't.
I think Zelda is the one game here we all liked.
Anthony's not here, is he?
No, he's not.
Convenient. My plan worked. My secret plan that was happening in the background. You have to play through. You have to listen to Game of the Year 5 times to hear what happened to Anthony.
Dare I say, let's put Zelda on top for now and see if the argument comes up to bring it off from there.
I agree. So Zelda's up there. We'll see what happens. I think Super Mario Odyssey should be in the top 5, but we don't have to do that right away if people are going to have some reservations about that. I feel like we are completely split, like 50-50 on each side of that. So what else?
Let's take some low-hanging fruit here first. I think Horizon should be in the bottom 10.
Okay.
Yeah, I think bottom 10 will be easier to do, right?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so we could just kind of do this like as we feel, if that feels more natural. Okay, so Horizon Zero Dawn is already down there.
We haven't talked about Wolfenstein yet. So let's talk about the games we haven't talked about yet.
Well,
Wolfenstein.
Let's talk about it as we're ordering them, I think, though.
Okay.
Like, do we think Wolfenstein should be in the top 5 or the bottom 5? I think it should be in the top 5, but maybe just... I think its writing is actually better than Hellblade, and I mean, the gameplay does have a lot of issues, but Hellblade is like... Its gameplay has a lot of issues, and also it's very minimal. It's like they didn't even try that much and still failed. Yeah, but I think so. Maybe some of the characters aren't working as well for you, but I think the overall I think there's the subtext of Wolfenstein 2.
My brothers and sisters of the United States of America, tonight, we, the free people of the Resistance, ask you to become one of us. Did you forget? They beat us! They murdered us! They executed us! But guess what?
Which is not very subtle, but
it's not subtle at all.
Yeah, exactly. But the way that they use the core of Wolfenstein and its history of this is a game about killing Nazis who are bad. Nazis are bad. Let's kill them. And it's like, okay, let's make another one of those games. What do we do that's new? Well, let's explore what would happen if America fell under Nazi rule. What would happen? And it looks like maybe not too much unlike a funhouse mirror of right this very second in America. And who is standing next to who? Who is standing next to the Nazis in Wolfenstein 2? Does that have any correlation to what's happening in our real world? And it clearly does, and they nail that stuff so hard. It takes guts to say in America there would be Nazi sympathizers even before our current political climate. Like if they were writing it already, and they were right. They were on point. They got it. They didn't like chicken out of that and say, well, no, everyone in America would feel like we're being oppressed and we're fighting against stuff. They said, no, some mediocre white dudes like your father in Wolfenstein 2 are going to be like, this is my chance to finally succeed. This is the way it should be because I'm entitled to this stuff. And that character is so indicative of like what we've been experiencing since 2016. He is anxieties about economic, realities or whatever brought into life. It's like, oh, he's got so many economic worries. No, he's just a fucking racist dude. Like he's super duper racist and awful and hates himself for being so bad at everything. And the fact that this character is in the game at all is insane. And the fact that they deal with it in such a way where it's like, you are his son, and the way we deal with people like this is to decide to no longer be like that. To decide, like, just because I look like this man, and like I look like the race that is in charge right now, these people that think that race matters, I'm going to decide that's not what really makes me one of them. What makes me different from them is that I am against everything they stand for.
Can I interject here for a second? So, to me, Dean and Jeff, you're arguing about the intent of this versus the first part of the game that launched this whole universe in Wolfenstein. And my question is it the logical consequence, Dean, as you say, or is it the folks at building on that universe and layering this next level to it?
Yeah, I think they clearly grow it. They're clearly, I mean, because I don't think it's just like, oh, there's Nazi sympathizers. It's so much more than that. It is like the young boys standing outside the movie theater talking about learning German and just wanting to like get girls still, and yet they're like, their mind is so far away from the characters that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, who are communists and radicals and black people and Jews, and how their life is threatened, and so many people who've been killed by this oppressive regime. Like that's your day to day, and that's the people you are choosing to associate with. And then when you go out into the world and you see all these people that's the furthest thing from their mind. They're just worried about cozying up to the Nazis. And it's not like they're betraying their friends and family. It has become the default that their friends and family are like, no, this is our new world. We're still pretty comfortable because we fit in here. So let's just take advantage of that. This is our new opportunity. It's just like the fact that it explores these themes at all is so impressive and makes it so much better than almost any other game in terms of its writing, that it blows me away. Yes, you go to Yeah, so you go to a space level. All right, that's fine. But all the stuff that happens on Venus is incredible story-wise. Meeting Hitler and the way Hitler behaves, and the fact that one of the actors is Ronald Reagan. That they totally hint at that. The actor that hit.
If I were to rank Hellblade and Wolfenstein, I would have them both about the same between 6 and 4.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think 6 and 4. That's going to be a hard one to do right now, but I think I'm kind of there with you. Here, real quick. Here's what I've done. As far as I know, we all have different number 1 games, and I've moved them all in the top 5, except for Stephanie. I don't know which game is your number 1. If it's
Night in the Woods.
Okay, that's what I figured. Okay, all right.
Come on, it has a cat as your main character.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
It's
Sorry. Everyone knows that if it has a cat, Stephanie's going to be predisposed to like it.
It opens the possibility.
Looking at that list, is there one that you want to tell another person your favorite game this year should be in the top 5? Because I have 2 games that should be in the top 5.
Okay, so the thing is, Mike, Jeff, and I are the only ones that play Divinity, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I would prefer us to anything in the top 5 be something that at least 4 of us played.
Well, no, because
possible.
And not necessarily. I mean, I think that is something we can feel out as we discuss stuff. But if people feel that passionately about a game, I don't want to discount that just because other people didn't take the time with it.
No, but we're all our schedules are so horrible when it comes to what can we play, what can we can't. The thing I
just don't want to penalize a game that's great just because we didn't take enough time.
Yeah, I love Divinity. It's my favorite game of the year, hands down, and there's 3 reasons why it is. Number 1, and I'll keep this short because I got to get going here pretty soon. Number 1, I love the combat system because it's all based on using resistances and weaknesses and strengths against one thing. And it's not just because you have armor against spells and armor against physical attacks. You can mix and match all these different elements and how they interact when it comes to combat. You could set something on fire by having them stand in oil, or you can do that with poison, or if you're one of the undead characters, you can sit in the poison and gain life. And the way you can interact with all that stuff, if someone's standing in water, you can throw down an electrical attack and create an electric fireball, essentially. And not only shock all these people, but get a chance to get a stun too. It opens up an incredible amount of tactics in a turn-based combat system for role-playing. The second thing I love about it is you can either make your own main character or you can take one of the main characters that were written, and each one of them have a very interesting line of quests and personalities and combats, what they are. One is the dwarf who's the beast, who I didn't put in my party, but I know a lot about who he is. He's got this huge grudge with the dwarven royalty. Another character is an assassin who's wondering whether she should continue being an assassin or not. Another of the main characters is a 1,000-year-old undead skeleton who says he's part of a great race, but he won't tell you who that race is. And it's essentially an undead. He's basically, if you remember Mort, the skull companion you had in Planescape Torment, he's Mort. But he, instead of just being a floating skull, he's an actual realized character who is going around with you and taking part. It could be your main character. And he's got his own line of quests about this mysterious of the past. And as you're all going about this, the whole quest is about becoming the new divine, which means of your party and these people you're building up and making bonds with and having affection for as you play with, only one of you is going to be the god at the end. but these are all your characters. And then the thing that makes it even better for me, and not everyone can enjoy this, and I understand that, is if you can play it co-op with other people. It's like playing a game of tabletop D&D on a computer without the without the concessions that you make to that. It's an utterly fantastic, delightful game. Great, interesting quests. Cool ways to muck around with systems. If you like systems and RPGs, this is for you. Is it a top 5 game? It is for me, but none of you cherish these kind of RPGs the way I do, and I don't know if it's a top 5 for you, and I don't know if I can make it a top 5 for you.
Yeah. So okay, here's what where I'm starting to feel. Looking at the top 5, there are games that I would actually want to move up. I would love to see PUBG in the top 5, but I get that might not make it. Wolfenstein 2, I think, should maybe be above some of those games, but it does have issues in its gameplay where it's the shooting doesn't feel great. I think that's the biggest problem. And I would move these above Hellblade and Night in the Woods. But Stephanie, do you want to maybe talk about Night in the Woods?
Sure. I mean, so I think. So am I the only person who's played it?
No,
I think so, right?
No, I've played it too.
You played it? Okay. So I feel like Jeff and Mike, you guys might not be so into it just because it isn't very mechanically complex, or sophisticated. It's very much a story-driven game. It's basically you play as May, who is a cat. That's just a coincidence. It may have led me to back the Kickstarter project, but it's not the reason why I love the game. You play as May, who's a college dropout. She goes back to her old town in the Rust Belt, Possum Springs, and it's really just about her reconnecting with her friends and family, and also trying to solve this mystery, these mysterious disappearances and possibly murders that's happening in her town. And I just think like the exploration of the theme is really great, about just sort of what it's like to be in a decaying Rust Belt town where the jobs are gone, people are leaving, people are trying to get out, and sort of it's like a love song to that kind of environment, while also investigating like the class differences and just all these like complex social issues. And there are also a lot of little mini games, like every night she has like this cosmic horror nightmare kind of thing. There's like platforming, and then as she's going around town, there's also like little mini games, like rhythm games, sort of like Guitar Hero. You can also play a dungeon crawler on her computer in the game. So I just think it's just got like so much variety there. It's not super challenging, and it is a lot of reading because it's a lot of dialogue and talking to people. But I just think it has so much personality. It's really memorable, in my opinion, and terrific art and music.
So, but it is challenging in that it makes you think about this little town and where this character fits. Because at first I really hated May.
Oh, really?
Because she seemed so oblivious to what was going on with the people around her and with her friends. I mean, she gets there and she doesn't even realize why one friend hates her, even though it was her treatment of her when they were younger that did it. And then, almost peeks in her car. Another friend, Angus, she only sees as somebody who's there to be helping her with her computer and not as an actual, friend. That was the way I took that away. And how she doesn't see that she had this great opportunity, and maybe I missed this, but I never quite get why she left college. But she doesn't get that there's people all around her who don't understand why she gave up this opportunity of being in college and getting out of this town that's dying.
Yeah, she's a flawed protagonist. I do think that there is something like she might have some kind of undiagnosed mental illness, because some of the things that she forgets or she doesn't understand just seem so, like the friend you were talking about, Jason, where she doesn't remember this really important detail, and like, you know, the way she just is kind of in her own head a lot of the times. I think there's like something a little bit more to her character, but again, it's sort of like you have a limited amount of time in the world, because like there's a number of, like, I forget if it's days or seasons where you're there, and I think it's probably days. But you can't really explore the town completely in just one run. You have to play it a couple different times, because there are little characters sort of hidden away in corners in the town that you can't talk to unless you go there at a certain time or on a certain day or during like certain weather conditions, I think. So I think like the whole story as a whole is really interesting, but it's also just these little moments. And I think just seeing May's character progress, because she does start off as like very like selfish and kind of, you know, self-involved at the very least.
And the other thing that I really like about it is how relevant it is for our moment. And you know, and it puts more of a
It does
face.
feel like a post 2008 game. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about those horrible stories about and here we understand the Trump voter. No, not in that way. Just seeing, you know, this town that's dying and what's happened to it, and seeing her friends from high school, you know, their limited jobs. You know, one's at the 7-Eleven, essentially. Another is working at a video store, which amazing that there's still a video store in this town, but maybe it's not, because maybe there's more video stores in little towns in the Midwest that I'm not aware of. And
okay.
Thank you, Mike. And how another friend had to take over the family business instead of doing what she wants to do. So, you know, to me, like Wolfenstein, it's very relevant for the day we're in, and the limited choices that the younger generation is facing today because of what my parents' generation has done to this country.
Okay, I want to keep this moving.
Yeah.
Let's can we decide what number 10 should be? Like, let's lock in one game. I'm thinking maybe Persona 5 or Horizon, maybe Hellblade.
I'll save Hellblade from that, actually.
Okay. Okay, cool.
That's
good to know.
I think Horizon should be number 10.
I'm okay with
I think that kind of works for me. I think it's a really well-made game. You know, it's just
I wish it didn't have stealth. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, whatever a good game, like whatever makes a good game counts. I think Horizon Zero Dawn is a well-made thing. It's just maybe a bit too much in that Far Cry vein to really get much higher than where it is. Okay, so Horizon Zero Dawn at number 10. How about some of these other games we're like kind of like iffy about, at least overall?
Nier is a flawed game. I like it a lot. I think that's fine at number 9.
And then Persona 5, Mike.
みんなオペラバスは分かってる。迷ってる時間ないよ。やっちゃって。ジョーカー始めるぞ。逃走経路は私がナビする。ともかく走って逃げて。
例の転校生ってのはお前だな。問題
No, yeah, I guess, you know, I'll just give it some lip service to say that if you like JRPGs, again, in all their weeby glory, like, this is really fantastic at that stuff. Especially these days, people aren't making a lot of, like, kind of, like, AAA JRPGs, especially turn-based one. Like, even Final Fantasy now is much more, like, real-time. So it's really cool to play something that was really this flashy and kind of exciting, and just presentation-wise, like, if there was an award for best menus in a game ever, Persona 5 wins that. Yeah, just really enjoyed it, but you know, it is a bit more of a niche-y thing.
Well, it's also without the designers realizing this, but it's so relevant because this group of kids are going out and dealing with the evil deeds of adults, and setting them to rights, and so much of it gets into, you know, what greed has done, what a thirst for power over people has done in the Me Too movement. And it ties into so much of what today is. And there's no way Atlas knew this. all
No.
this when they were making it.
It's like Wolfenstein 2. There's like this underlying truth that if you just tell a truthful fiction,
Yes,
chances are
exactly.
it'll be reflected in reality.
Exactly. And it's something, it deserves to be in our top 10, probably in the bottom of the top 10.
Yeah, well, I think we got it.
Stephanie, what do you think?
8. Oh,
I haven't played Persona 5.
Oh, gosh. But this is like the weeb stuff you love.
There's a character in it.
Mike has chastised me. I think I'm going to try to play it over the weekend.
Yeah,
or once I get back to
you'll
LA.
enjoy it. My only thing is I don't like the outfit of one of the characters because it's the whole sexualization of women that you find in JRPGs, but, that's not going to change.
Yeah, it kind of comes with the territory.
That's not going to change.
People like what they like when it comes to other people. Yeah. Nier
Oh,
had some stuff to say about that stuff later in the game, which I was really happy to find out, but also there's something to be said just to make appealing characters, and sometimes that's okay. So we have 2 spots left in the bottom 5, and this is where I'm starting to feel things are going to get difficult. I mean, we have PUBG and Wolfenstein 2. That is no one's game of the year. The other 5 are all, at least, they're all our game of the years on an individual level. So it's hard for me to want to move these games up to take one of those spots, and at the same time, it feels weird to me to see Hellblade and Night in the Woods above PUBG and Wolfenstein 2, but maybe not. It's something I could live with if. Yeah, so here's where I'm at. Dean, you help me kind of break through here a little bit. So I think we have these 3 games that should be kind of in the middle of the list that all are on our top 10 because of their writing and because of the worlds they built and their characters. And it's Night in the Woods, Hellblade, and Wolfenstein 2. Of these 3, I think Night in the Woods should be on the top, and my reasoning for that is Hellblade and Wolfenstein 2 have great writing. I think Wolfenstein 2, personally, has better writing than any of these, but Wolfenstein 2 also has a lot of mechanical gameplay problems where it's too hard. You're kind of the most interesting thing is looking for objects in the world, and it has problems. The aiming, the gunplay is not good. I think Hellblade has a lot of boring puzzles that really turned me off, and that's why I'm not going to finish the game. I appreciate maybe things do get better in the second half, but it's not a long game, and the first couple hours were I'm just doing these things that I just was not finding compelling at all. Night in the Woods, it sounds like, is happy being a story-based game and happy about making it about its characters without putting a lot of other stuff in there as it has to be these other things. It has to have all this other stuff for you to do. And to me, that might make it a better experience overall than these other 2 games. So if we
can I interject here?
Yeah, real quick. Let me just finish. I think it would go Night in the Woods, maybe Wolfenstein 2, and then Hellblade. But if you want, Dean, I'm okay with leaving Hellblade above Wolfenstein 2 if that would make the sting a little bit easier to take.
I'm also okay putting Divinity below Night in the Woods and Hellblade.
Okay.
Because I think Night in the Woods and Hellblade both teach us more about people around us and the moment we're in.
Yeah, and I think that's an admirable thing, but I would hesitate to discount what Divinity tells us about, which is about systems interacting with one another and the consequences of actual just physical actions, which is such an important part of games. And it's no less important than a game telling us about people. There's a million ways to go out into the world and find art that tells you about people. What games does better is tells you about the systems of the world that you exist in and gives you a chance to explore those in new and functional ways.
Yeah, but
I think Divinity does that a little bit better.
I'm still putting the others above it.
And I think you might be right there. Okay, so here's where we're at basically. I think definitely in the top 5 is Zelda. I would say definitely in the top 5 is Mario because I'm with Mike in terms of it being one of the best games I've ever played. So I know people don't get it, but I don't know. Does anyone think it's a bad game?
I don't think
not a bad game.
Right, right, exactly. And that's where where Nier, I think Nier's kind of a bad game. I think Hellblade's kind of a bad game, even if it has good writing and a lot of these other elements are good. But so I think Mario in the top 5 makes sense. What I don't know is where we slot in PUBG.
Number 5 is where I would put it.
Okay, so then what is 3 and 4?
How high are you guys gonna let me get Mario up there?
I think Mario at number 2 works really well for me, but I get if we want to like move some of the stuff higher. I just don't know which of those games, Night in the Woods, Hellblade, Divinity, Wolfenstein 2, goes above it. I would have a really hard time accepting any of those. But especially since I'm at a point where like maybe Night in the Woods, just because it knows what it is better than these other games, and
I'd be fine with that. I think Night in the Woods is an excellent.
Yeah.
And the new Weird Autumn Edition Director's Cut is out now, so.
Is it really? Oh, all right.
Yeah. Which I need to play. I'm like dying to get home to LA to play.
It's like it's hard for me to advance P-Bug higher because I love the emergent storytelling, as I've already made a huge case for. But there's parts of it that just turn people off so much. Because if you don't like shooting, you're not going to like the game.
Right, but I just think that's, it can't help what it is. It just, I get that a little bit, but
yeah, but
I don't like a lot of the basic conceits of a lot of these games. And
but then,
okay,
and then the second thing would be the fact that by the time we were appraising it, it didn't have a map that it has now, and wasn't even couldn't even jump.
Okay, Assassin's Creed only has one map. I mean, like that map argument never ever works for me because people are like, oh, it only has one map. That map is bigger than most video games.
Oh like, there's no
people are crazy.
It's just they talked about it but the fact that you can't jump.
Well, you can now.
But when
you could always jump. You couldn't vault. You couldn't like clamber over an object.
Yeah,
but that's in there now.
Yeah. And I'm quite eager to see how high I can climb.
Yeah, I mean it works really well actually. But, I mean that never hurt the experience. That never really detracted from anything.
Oh, you see, it did for me because I wanted more. I wanted to be able to take advantage of getting up higher.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Mike?
Yes, I don't know. Just I feel like this list looks good. Does anybody see something about this list that they don't like?
Yeah, I'll just say real quick. This list,
like obviously it's not your list, but is there anything about this list that like upsets you viscerally?
I am cool moving up Wolfenstein over Divinity.
Okay, I think I can.
Because of two reasons. Because of the moment and biased, but this Jew likes killing Nazis.
So that's a good reason. It kind of kills me to see Hellblade above Wolfenstein 2, but if Dean did make a pretty good argument for it.
I'll back Dean up. I didn't.
I will back Dean up on it too.
Yeah, and you guys are with them. So yeah, that does make it quite a bit easier to accept.
I mean, I think Hellblade is an achievement. I think Hellblade is an achievement for indie games, showing that they can make AAA quality.
Yeah, but I think, the way it's made, it's better than a lot of AAA games.
Hey, I just want to say, you realize our least talked about game by far is now Zelda.
Here it comes!
You must save her, my daughter.
Yeah, I think because the problem is like all these conversations. Well, we're going to talk about it right now, and then I think that we can finalize this list. But I think the problem is like the conversations come from conflict, right? When we're building something like this, the reason you ever feel compelled to like defend a game is because someone else is like, well, it's not as good. And Zelda, if Anthony were here, I bet it would be our most talked about.
Oh my
game,
god,
for sure.
This podcast would be twice as long as it already is.
Well, exactly. It's gone way longer than we intended. We are at like more than 2 hours.
Anthony, I love you. I'm so happy you're not here right now, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but to give Zelda its time, I could try to play Anthony, but the problem is Zelda's just
we can't.
Good game.
We can't put ourselves.
Yeah, I just want to sit quietly and think about how great Zelda is.
Let's talk about Zelda a little bit. We have to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, can I talk about it first?
Yeah, please.
Great. So what I love about it is it does what Skyrim promised, but you couldn't do. Because you could have climbed at the top of the mountain you saw in Skyrim. There are some mountains that no matter how much you tried to cheese the climbing, jumping in it, you couldn't get to that peak. And God damn it, you could do it in Zelda. And that's the first game that you could climb that mountain that you see that I've played. And that promise was delivered. And I respect
it was an old thing. Yeah, it was an old thing like, oh, you see that mountain, you can climb it. But you don't realize just how that wasn't really true until Zelda for a lot of things. But it's more about what that represents. It's like, it's not just like you see that mountain, you can climb to it. Just about like any thought you have, like I wonder if that's going to work, just based on the systems that are in the game. Like one I discovered recently because someone posted a GIF of it is the magnetism power that Link gets pretty early in the game.
That was cool.
You could throw a metal boomerang out. And because it's metal, of course, you can use your magnetism power to grab it while it's still in the air and then hold it in the air while it's still spinning, and it turns to a weapon you can carry out in front of you. And someone's like, oh, I wonder if that would work. And the game says, we have built these systems in I'm trying to find the word, but in like an agnostic way, in a way that's like, we're not trying to define what you should be experiencing. We are going to define the rule set and let you figure out what it means on your own. I in my review, I called it back to the first Zelda game that I fell in love with, which was Link's Awakening for the Game Boy. I was a kid. I was trying to figure out the way games worked. This game was relatively complicated for my 10-year-old brain or whatever. And the second boss, in games, I was always just used to jumping on people's heads or attacking them, and that would kill them eventually. The second boss, you had to pick them up and to throw them against the wall because they were in like a bottle, and you had to break the bottle by doing that. And the reason you knew you were supposed to do that is because in that level you got the power ring that lets you lift up heavy objects. But I'm like, no, if you touch a bad guy, you're going to die. And eventually, literally after months of trying, because I would like play the game here and there, especially on road trips with my family, I finally figured it out. And it was such a breakthrough moment of like, oh, they were trying to tell me this entire time how to use this weapon and how to take care of this boss. But it was very directed. It was very much set up like, here's the puzzle. We're going to lead you up to it and give you all the tools and the understanding by giving you smaller puzzles to figure out along the way. And then when it comes time, you're going to have to perform. You're going to have to figure out how to do it in the moment where it really counts. And that's great. But then the Zelda series did that over and over and over for more than a decade, 2 decades, and it kind of ran it into the ground. What this Zelda game does is it sets up the possibility for those sorts of discoveries over and over and over again because it's systems based. Because if you learn the way a system works, there's kind of an infinite possibility. Like there's infinite possibilities for ways to use that system, and you have ideas and you have breakthroughs. You're like, oh, it does work. That the game is going to enable me to do that, and that is such a breakthrough. It's such an analog way as opposed to the digital way of making games that, it's easily the best game I think I've played since that first Zelda that I really fell in love with.
It does the game itself just kind of ruins like Assassin's Creed in some ways because it is just so much more like
it ruined Horizon for me a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
I wish I would play Horizon
changed
first.
open world. Yeah, open world games aren't going to be the same ever again. I don't think.
I hope not.
Zelda.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Because a Skyrim that doesn't incorporate actually being able to get to a top of the mountain, get to any point, it is not going to not going to be as good for the Elder Scrolls.
Right. I think Skyrim I think the Elder Scrolls games need to re-examine how their systems work. They have a lot of stuff in there that doesn't amount to much. Like you could pick up every object in this world. Okay. But what do I do with that? Like, what does that enable me to do? It's like, oh, sometimes you could pick up poison and put it in someone's cup, and maybe they'll take it, maybe they'll drink it. And it's like, it just doesn't feel like the verbs that are unlocked by having all these systems in Skyrim amount to much in the way they do in Zelda. Like the way the electricity works, like throwing metal on the ground. Of course, it's going to attract lightning, and you could use that to attack enemies. A big sleeping Hinox. You throw your sword over right next to him, and the lightning hits him. It's like it takes off a bunch of damage at the beginning of the fight. He wakes up and he looks around, what the hell's going on? He sees you and attacks. Like that, like it all makes so much sense in a way. It's like so tight in a way that a lot of these other open world games aren't. That it's something special. But I think we like it all so much that we don't need to talk about it much more than that. I'm good with this list. Is everyone happy? I mean, as happy as we can be.
I'm as happy as can be.
This is not democracy. Democracy would have been us voting, and I think the list would have looked very different and not as interesting had we done that.
Yeah, we've done that before, and it's not as interesting.
Yeah, it's just you come like I think some of these games just simply wouldn't be on here, or they'd be very close to the bottom, and that would not have worked. So here's our top 10, starting from number 10: Horizon Zero Dawn, Nier Automata, Persona 5, Divinity: Original Sin 2, Wolfenstein 2, Hellblade, PUBG, Night in the Woods, Super Mario Odyssey, Zelda. That looks... Yeah, me too. I think that's pretty good. And the best part is I understand why everything is where it's at. Especially games that I either only just saw or played a little bit of, like Night in the Woods, Hellblade. I think you guys did a really good job of kind of giving them their time and helping us figure out why they deserve to be so high.
You guys were kind of scaring me with that Mario talk for a little bit. But...
Yeah, Mike, I had your back. I got control of this list.
I was so scared for a bit.
I guess I kind of get there are players that are very different than me. It's just when I think about games, boy, is Super Mario Odyssey just one of the best examples of what a game should be.
I'll allow myself to be a little selfish every once in a while.
Absolutely. Okay, guys.
I really like Mario games.
So, Mike, here's the thing. That's if he had done that, he would have died on the podcast, and I don't want to have to replace my reviews editor.
So, see, Jason was being selfish.
I might have just blown up.
Plus, I don't want to leave Penny without her.
Yeah, that would be cruel.
Yeah,
right.
I would never do that to a dog.
I think we can wrap this up. I'm gonna go play more Mario. Okay, yeah. Thank you guys so much for doing this list with me. This is one of my favorite things to do each year. It was really good. Thank you, everyone who listened to this entire thing. If you haven't listened to our other episodes, go back. You could hear some of us talk about some of these other games a little bit more in other more bespoke categories. Just thank you once again. You can read all about these games. We'll have breakdowns of this list with a little bit write-ups for each one on GamesBeat.com. Be sure to check that out. And we're going to go kind of be... we've actually been off because it's coming out Friday of that week. But we've been kind of only half in the office, half paying attention this week. So I hope you guys all had a good holiday. Have a safe new year. And we'll see you in 2018.
Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. We love you all. Thank you.
Love you all so much.
I like you, okay.
I love you, Mike Minotti.